hereby call this meeting to order, and we welcome everyone here this morning to participate in the San Angelo City Council. I would like at first to bring Mr. Ron Patterson up. He is the preacher at the Harvest Baptist Church, and I will ask him to give our invocation. So if you would all rise.
Your own, sir. All right, thank you very much. Could we bow for prayer at this time? Our Heavenly Father, we come to your throne of grace this morning, Lord, thanking you for all that you do for us, and we're so glad that we have a privilege to address you as our Heavenly Father. We understand from the Word of God that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Lord, we realize today that the earth is yours, and you possess the fullness of it, but you also possess the dwellers of it. And Lord, we thank you today that we have the privilege to just come and bow and ask you for your hand of blessing upon this time, upon this meeting. Lord, we thank you for our past fathers. We thank you for the ones that gave us a wonderful country like America. We thank you that they had the vision of starting a nation, one nation under God. And that, Lord, they have procured it for us. And now it's our job to carry the responsibility on. Lord, we're thankful that for our federal government, for our president. We're thankful, Lord, for the leadership there. And we pray that they would be seeking your direction to lead our country. We thank you for the good state of Texas. And Lord, I pray that you would bless this wonderful state. Thank you for the good leaders you've raised up in this state. And now here we are in our own community. Lord, we're asking you for your direction to guide our government here and to give us wisdom. We sure need your help, Father. And I pray that as you have given us direction and you've given us the ability to understand things, I pray that we would take that knowledge and use it wisely. Bless our leaders. Give them the wisdom to lead our community. And Lord, we do thank you for this wonderful community. Bless only as you can this day. It's in Christ's name we pray and we ask it. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much. Now, I would like to bring forward Mr. Cash Conley. Cash is the son of Stephen Conley, who's in our irrigation horticultural supervisor in the Parks Operation Division. And Mr. Cash is going to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Whenever you're ready, get started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, buddy.
Good job.
Appreciate you. Good job. And now we have some proclamations. Is there anyone here from the Lighthouse for the Blind? West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind. Well, I'm going to read it anyway, and I'll give it to you, Ms. Ramirez, and you can get it to them. Fair?
Fair.
Let me read this proclamation. Whereas the West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind is a community-based nonprofit organization providing employment opportunities to people who are blind or visually impaired in San Angelo and 40 West Texas counties, and whereas the West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind provides a safe place to work, on-the-job training, competitive wages and benefits to the visually impaired so that they can gain independence and a better quality of life, and whereas the West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind provides on-time goods and services at a competitive price to the state of Texas and the federal government, and whereas in San Angelo, Texas, the West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind provides employment opportunities and training to 38 people who are blind or visually impaired. And whereas San Angelo, Texas recognizes the important contribution and mission of creating jobs and changing lives of the West Texas Lighthouse for the Blind to San Angelo, Texas, and its citizens, therefore I, Dwayne Morrison, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, Texas, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of August 26 through August 30, 2013 as West Texas Lighthouse Services Week, to recognize the staff and employees of the West Texas Lighthouse for their contribution to their community for these past 50 years, and to wish them many more years of success for their endeavors. And I think officially the 50-year will be on this next Saturday, I believe. So I'll just present that to them then. Okay. All right, we have a couple more proclamations. This is to the state games. The State Games of America participant Seth Demir, San Angelo Recreation Track Club. And if you would come forward, please, Mr. Seth. Good morning. And I am impressed by this young man. Let me read this. This is a special recognition for Seth. Whereas the State Games of America was held July 31 through August 4, 2013 in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and was attended by Seth Demir of the San Angelo Recreation Track Club, and whereas Seth qualified to participate in this competition by placing in the top 3 in his age division for the 16 under pole vault competition in last year's Texas Amateur Athletic Federation Summer Games of Texas, and whereas Seth was able to bring home a gold medal for his exemplary performance in the pole vault competition at the State Games of America, Hershey, Pennsylvania, Seth faced fierce competition from athletes across the nation. Now, therefore, I, Dwayne Morrison, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and sincerely applaud the outstanding athletic ability of Seth Demir. Thank you, sir. And I think he might be best enough.
Thanking you for having the track program.
He brought me chocolate. Let's read this again. Let's get a picture. Thank you, man. Congratulations. I'm not sharing. This is my chocolate.
No.
Let me hold a few more.
Seth, let me give you this, please. Thank you, buddy. All right, and we have one more proclamation. This is for the 2013 Corpus Christi Games of Texas. Bailey Kinney broke the state 800 meter. Zach Cabrera, Jessica Simon. If y'all would please come forward and let me read this and present you. Good morning. How are you? Good morning. Let me read this, please. The Texas Amateur Athletic Federation 2013 Games of Texas State Track Meet was held July 25 through 28, 2013 in Corpus Christi, Texas, and was attended by Hagen Stout, Jessica Simon, Bailey Kinney, and Zach Cabrera of the San Angelo Recreation Track Club. And whereas the TAAF Summer Games of Texas is the largest amateur athletic event held in Texas, and these individuals performed commendably. Whereas Hagen Stout brought home the bronze in 16 under pole vault, Jessica Simon brought home the silver in the 12 under 1600 meter run, Bailey Kinney brought home the silver in the 14 under girls 800 meter run and set the state record for the 12 under girls 800 meter run in the 212 games, and Zach Cabrera brought home the silver in the boys 16 under 1600 meter run. Now therefore I, Dwayne Morrison, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and sincerely applaud the outstanding athletic ability of Hagen Stout, Jessica Simon, Bailey Kinney, and Zach Cabrera. Y'all want to make a speech? You want to make a speech? Let me give you this and let's get a picture. Hold that up so Brian can get a picture of it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd also like to recognize one of our staff employees. Mary Ann, what is Robert? I went blank on Robert's last name. Robert Aldete. At those events, there was a young lady, I believe, that had a seizure, and he went to her rescue and was able to help her out. And and make sure she was okay. So Robert, stand up, man. You need a hand of. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Johnny. Seth, I forgot to ask you if you want to make a speech.
Well,
Do you want to make a speech? Speech?
no, that's fine.
Okay. I didn't overlook you intentionally. I just overlooked you.
He thinks you should open the box of chocolate.
No, sir. No, sir. That's chocolate staying right where it is.
I should have taken them when you first brought them up here.
It's too late now. Thank you. All right, we have.
Oh, my goodness, I think that's fine. Oh, wow. There you go.
Hold on just a minute, Seth. We did open this up.
Need a picture of that, man.
Brian, we need a picture, buddy.
I thought it was way too heavy. That'd just be a little. What does it say? Can you read it?
I appreciate this. Look, this is council.
What does it say?
It says, City of San Angelo, thank you for your summer track program, and it's signed by Seth.
All right.
Council might appreciate it if I gave him a shot at it.
I used to work with his mom. She reminded me years ago. Esta que va aquí.
Isn't that something?
Didn't you know
No, I'm glad you did. Man, I would hate it to have missed that opportunity. All right, this is the time for public comment. When the council takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda, public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the council at this time. The public may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. On public hearing items, public input will be received on each item immediately following the council discussion and prior to any action on the item. Each member of the public should make the remarks from the podium, begin by stating their name. Remarks by each citizen will be limited to 3 to 5 minutes unless waived by a council member for speaking on that matter. No individual will be allowed to speak more than once on any one subject until every citizen wishing to comment has done so. So at this time, if there is anyone in the public that wishes to bring forward and address anything that is not on the agenda, whether consent or regular, this is your time. State your name and you have the floor, sir.
Good morning. I'm Tim Davenport Herbst with the West Texas Organizing Strategy, and I just want to bring to your attention that this Saturday we will be having an important event in San Angelo. We are commemorating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, for which Martin Luther King Jr. is well known with the I Have a Dream speech. It's beginning at Martin Luther King Park at 9 a.m. and then will proceed down MLK to City Hall. We invite everyone to be a part of this. If you can't make the entire walk, please do come and join us at City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that cares to speak? If you would, identify yourself and you have the floor, sir.
My name is Lee Bell, and I am with the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association, and I'm also a member of the Architect Control Committee. And I told at our last meeting that we had, our homeowners meeting, that I would address the City Council. And what I want to talk about, of course, first of all, I want to say that I'm very much looking forward to working with the new City Council. I think our last City Council left a little to be desired, and the mayor too. And I'm really looking forward to this new bunch. And part of this stems from that. And of course, I know that y'all weren't the ones that did this when they voted out of our Lake Nasworthy home sales funds, which I think we have around 10 million, don't take this as exact figures, but around 10 million, we have around $1 million in interest money. which is, from my understanding, we can spend the interest money, but we can't spend the principal unless we go to the voters with the thing. And the last city council voted $365,000 to have a study done. And the best I can tell about this study, that they were wanting to put hotels, fix big, beautiful things around Lake Nasworthy. My understanding that money was supposed to be spent on hard labor and things to be built out there, which this study wasn't. And of course, this study, I think Gateway did say that you might think that water is the most important thing, but we're looking into the future. Well, I disagree with them. I think water is everything, and we need to think about our water first and foremost. What I've worked with is with Carl White, and I would like to maybe get something set on a future meeting. I have got some estimates on a boathouse for the police boats. Now, it's my understanding that we've got money a lot of different places. We just got a grant from a $500,000 grant from the Parks and Wildlife for work on the lakes and the parks. Also, we have that money in the Lake Nasworthy Homeowners Association Fund that is under y'all's control. And I looked at a boathouse. I've worked with the Chief Fazdez, and I've looked with the policemen that actually run the boats. And we've looked at a boathouse, and that's about 1,000 square feet, and that runs about $40 a square foot. That's about $40,000. Also, I've looked at putting in boat ramp at South Concho Park, and a 40 by 60 boat ramp, that runs about $35,000. I mean, just a little bit of money here and there could, I think, do a whole lot more than this study is ever going to tell us, which that study is about based on Twin Buttes being full, and it's far from being full, so we have a hard time there. Another thing I would like to say is Ricky Dixon back here, I think he's a magician somehow by being able to keep as much water as he's been able to do throughout this spring and this summer in there to have our boat races, our picnic parade, our 4th of July, our also the Wake the Desert, and people don't realize just how much money that does bring in there, and he has just done a wonderful job of keeping our lake as full as he has under these dire conditions. But anyway, I would like to work on that, and I think in the past this boathouse for the police boats has been okayed. It has been passed. Of course, at that time, we lose our city manager, we lose our public works director, we lose a whole city council, we get a whole new deal. So I know some of them was real upset about that, and I know y'all had, and like I said, I'm looking forward to working with y'all, and I would sure like to get that on the agenda. I'll work with people and try to get some bids put out on this, but I'm working with Carl also. But I told guys I'd address this.
Thank you, sir. I got an email on this
Okay.
on this boathouse just this last week, and I forwarded it to Daniel.
Okay.
So he is very aware of it, and he has forwarded it out. So
Okay.
it has not been forgotten.
Okay, well, I'm trying to help with the homeowner association, and I am getting plans together on it, and I am working with the deal that we might get a set of plans that everybody likes, and then try to put them out for bids.
Appreciate
I'll
you
get
very
in
much.
touch with you.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to that?
No, it's fine.
Is there anyone else that cares to speak to anything, any public comment that is not on the consent or the regular agenda? If so, this is your time. Anyone on the council have anything to say? Are there any items that you wish to pull? Charlotte?
I'd like to pull item number 4 for discussion.
Okay, item number 4 is a special recreation lease. Okay, we will pull that one to place it on the regular agenda for discussion. Do I have any other items that need to be pulled from the consent to put on the regular?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda minus item number 4.
Okay, that would be items number 1 through items number 7. And it has been moved. And let me explain this. I got a letter, and I know Johnny, maybe all of the council people got letters this week from a from a concerned citizen that explained to us that to say, "I make a motion," is very wrong, that is not the way it is to be said, and that the proper way to say it is to move that an item be rejected or ignored or denied or whatever. So we're trying to be more politically correct, and we're trying to be grammatically correct. So I applaud Mr. Silvas. He has moved that we approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of number 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other council discussion? Is there any discussion on the consent agenda from the public? In that case, I'll call for the vote. All of those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of number 4, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, now we will move to item number 4. This will be on the regular agenda. It's consideration of approving special recreational lease agreement for 0.117 acres of land, Bale, located adjacent to the lake or river, and authorizing the city manager or water utilities director to execute the same. And for this, we will go to Mr. Ricky Dixon. Would you like to preface this, Charlotte?
Yes, in my main question is, who sets the lease amount?
Who sets it?
Who sets the lease amount?
It's as in. I
This
think it's
particular lease is
Exhibit B.
for $257 a year
Yes, ma'am.
on an amenity, and I just felt like it was extremely small, that dollar amount. We were just discussing last week about looking at fees and increasing fees, so I was curious as to who sets
Right.
this fee.
These fees are set as all of them are. Your Exhibit B shows kind of the way the lease fees go, and it's the way it's set. And it is a small amount, but this is a very small piece of property also. I mean, it's smaller than some house lots in town. I mean, it's real small. I mean, and yes, we're going to look at all the fees on everything, in this upcoming year, but these are the way these have been set. And Exhibit B shows the lease fee and the river frontage fee in all of those situations, that all of them are set by the same portion.
I'm just highly objection to it being so small. It is an amenity. That's things that need to increase as use is out at the lake, and that's just my only concern, is the amount.
Do you have any idea what it's going to be used for? Because this concerns me, these river access.
Well, this one is actually on South Concho Drive, and it abuts Lake Nazworthy, and they're recreational only. They can't build anything on it. They can't store personal property on it. If they request and receive written approval for strictly recreational items to be placed on there, a temporary type structure, we can do that if we give them written permission. So it's just a piece of grass on the lake.
My primary concern is these oil field trucks that back down there and throw their hose in the river. Now, that's what I'm concerned about, and I don't want anything like that. And I don't want to give anyone any rights to the river for water.
Right.
Well, this is a 5-year term, so that rate is locked in for 5 years, and that's what I object to.
Well, I will entertain a motion,
Well,
either way you want to make it.
my motion would be to deny and review the lease amount.
Anyone want to second that?
I have a question. Can you be more specific on the recreational use or recreational?
Well, on these special recreational lease agreements, the permitted use is solely for recreational use only. And there's a portion in the lease that specifically says what it cannot be used for. No improvements or construction work including but not limited to living quarters, buildings, pump houses, water wells, storage building, excavation, fields, or other types of structures or improvements shall be built or placed on the leased premises. No storage of personal property shall be permitted on the leased premises, including equipment, machinery, vehicles, appliances, temporary electrical wiring, materials, or supplies. And nothing that create or allow any nuisance or waste on the leased premises. No clearing, no new roads, no removing of trees, no hunting, and no litter. I mean, that's its limitations.
Ricky, I guess my question is if Mr. Bell or Mrs. Bell are here, if they could. Okay. Can you just give us an idea?
Let me go ahead and second this. That way that'll open it up for discussion and we can discuss it. And I'll ask for public comments.
Okay, yeah, this is done. What it is, it's a lease that I've had with the city for about 5 years. And actually, the lease was never put in my name. It was, I don't know, it was put on, not in a lease form like they have right here. And the property is about as big as this building. Right, I mean, this room right here. That's about how big the property was. This property was obtained by the city from Curry to Cody at a time which they were building the South Concho Drive. And as they were building the South Concho Drive, he traded land in there for land behind out for the, I believe, east-west runway on Mathis Field. And that's how this property came to be. And in the old lease, I haven't had a chance to read this new lease, I just got it yesterday. And anyway, also they put, there was an old boathouse, and the lease said it's for a boathouse only. And it had went with Mr. Ducote. It went from him to Charles Ducote. They sold it to someone, and they sold the lease to me. Well, we viewed it for just a boathouse and recreation. That boathouse was falling down, and the city, Mr. Dixon sent me a letter saying that it needed to be tore down, and I have tore it down. I still have some posts out there. I have put lights on them so boats won't run into them till I can get that tore back out. But that's all it was used for, was just a place to park and to use the boathouse. And like I said, I've had it forever. So what we're actually doing with this is renewing the lease, which the lease went out last year. However, I paid my dues and the city accepted my money, and this was just renewing the lease that I had, and with the provisions of taking the structure that was out there falling down in the lake out. And so, working with Ricky, we've just got that cleared up and got that done. This is just basically a formality of renewing my lease.
Thank you, sir. Any other, Rodney?
Is that the lot that's surrounded by the park there? Is that the lot we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
The one that just kind of sticks right there by the boat ramp?
Yes, sir.
This is my district, and I sell a lot of houses out there that are in there. This lease is right in line with all those. This is a small lot. Most of those leases out there are usually around $500 to $600 with the house on them, and way bigger. So I don't think that this price of the $257 is out of line in any way.
Any other council discussion? Any other discussion from the public? Okay, we're going to call for the vote. The motion has been made. Did I say that correctly? It has been moved that we deny this request. It has been seconded. So an aye vote will in fact be a denial of extending the lease. So the motion has been made and seconded. All of those in favor of denying the lease say aye.
Aye.
Let's see hands. All those that are opposed say nay. Nay.
Nay.
The lease has been extended by a 5-2 vote.
Well, no. We had to.
I'll do another.
Okay.
There you go.
I move that we accept this lease as it is written.
Second. I'll second. Been another motion that we accept the lease as presented. It has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have 2 nays, Mr. Wardlaw, Ms. Farmer, and 5 ayes. Motion approved. All right, let's move on now
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
to item number 8. This is public hearing and comment. This is, now I'll ask the council, is there anything on this agenda that y'all would like to move around first to accommodate the public? If there is, this is be a good time to suggest it.
I'd like to remove item number 9. Yes.
You'd like to table number 9?
Yes, I want to.
Okay, well, we'll do that when we get to it. Is there any other items that anyone would like to move forward?
Move forward, no. I'd like to move our budget discussion to the end because I think the audience, for the most part, are here for other things, and rather than bore them with a lot of facts and figures, unless they're just here for that, moving it to the end might be a little easier on everyone.
I certainly don't have a problem with that. Does anyone have a problem with moving all the budgets to the end? Okay, Johnny?
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say, I don't know how long number 8 will take. Is it going to be lengthy, do you think?
No, sir, not going to be lengthy at all.
Okay. I was going to move.
Not going to
number-
be from me, it may be from the
Okay.
council. Not going to take me long.
That's fine.
Okay? Okay, let's move on then to number 8. Number 8 is consideration and possible action regarding a revision to the City of San Angelo Development Corporation guidelines for job creation assistance regarding eligibility of applicants. And I recommended, or I asked that this be placed on the agenda. And I would like to explain why. This was a campaign promise that I made when I was on the trail, and everywhere I went and spoke about this, I had complete participation from all the groups that I spoke to. January the 3rd, 2012, prior to January the 3rd, 2012, there was a guideline, there was a code of ethics, a conflict of interest clause that was part of the bylaws of the COSADC, the City of San Angelo Development Corporation bylaws. On January the 3rd, 2012, by a 5-2 vote of the City Council, we removed this conflict of interest and this code of ethics from the bylaws, and we minimized it. I would like to read the bylaws as it was stated and was in effect before January the 3rd, 2012. It was called the eligibility of applicants. It said no member of the San Angelo City Council or persons related to a council member within the second degree of consanguinity or affinity shall be eligible for assistance from the COSADC during his or her tenure or for 6 months thereafter. Item number 2 said, no member of the San Angelo Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors or person related to a board member within the second degree of consanguinity or affinity shall be eligible for assistance from the COSADC during his or her tenure for 6 months thereafter. Right after we voted on this and took this code of ethics and this conflict of interest clause out, there was a poll in the San Angelo Standard Times. 82% of the people that voted on this poll, it was not a scientific poll, it was simply a poll that was put out. 82% of the people that voted on this poll said that the council made a grave mistake by removing this conflict of interest and this code of ethics. I have no problem with anyone that is on the board or anyone that is on the city council. I have no problem with them in a capitalistic move asking for city assistance, which is in effect your tax money, to help them in their business. But I want the rules put in that says they will be off of the board and they will be off of the council for 6 months before they will be eligible for this money. We must protect our citizens, and when we took this clause out, we left things wide open for abuses from an inside position on the council or an inside position on the board, and we created a very strong disservice. And I want this clause put back in to the Code of Ethics, put back into the COSADC guidelines to protect the citizens of our city. And I will move that these codes that were in existence until January the 3rd, 2012, be put back in and be reactivated as part of the bylaws of the COSADC.
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Wardlaw.
I'd like to make a comment on that, Mr. Mayor. Let the record show I was not on the council when this took place.
You were not.
I have one concern. I'm with you, but it talks about individual, does it not? Nowadays, everybody forms an LLC or LLP or a LP, and it seems to me like if you want to be more inclusive and more protective of the citizens, you ought to include language in there that if a person forms an LLC, not just as in his individual capacity, it ought to, that code of ethics ought to catch him.
That is an excellent suggestion, and I had not thought of that, but you are absolutely right.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. And I don't know what the language should be, and possibly this will require further work, but yes, that is a very good suggestion. I thank you for that, and I believe that would better protect our citizens, and that's exactly what I want this for.
Mr. Mayor?
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
I do recall the item quite well. There's lots of discussion, and I would like to see this go to the COSADC board and them to make the recommendations and set up the changes and send it back to us since it's over them. I agree with it. I'll vote for it, but I just want it to go back to the board as part of their job to oversee and do, and maybe a couple other areas in the bylaws that they might want to tweak. So it may need a committee meeting with COSADC and a council member to get this going, or not. That's just a suggestion. Doesn't have to. Council can do it. They have the authority to do it. But maybe it's time we looked at all of the bylaws and take this opportunity to do so.
And that's a good comment as well. Any other council? Is there any discussion from the floor? Identify yourself, please, sir, and you have the floor.
I'm Bob Schneeman, Interim Director of Economic Development for the city. I'm afraid Mr. Wardlaw and this farmer stole most of my thunder, but because those were the two items that I was going to ask that we be able to address. I'd like to offer staff's efforts to come up with a better guideline than what we have here that is more specific to ownership in companies and that sort of thing. And I do think there are other guidelines that could be looked at, and I'd like to encourage that sort of common effort between council, COSADC staff, and the COSADC board to let's all get in line with what we want these things to say.
Thank you very much.
And I was on council when that was changed, and it was changed to meet state guidelines, to mirror state guidelines, and that lessened our ability.
Yes.
When we went to meet state guidelines.
All right, let me redo this motion, and I'll ask you if you will redo your second, Ms. Fleming. I would like to go ahead, the motion has been made to reinstate this, and I would like to reinstate this as it is right now back into the bylaws. But with the reinstatement, I would authorize COSADC to study this and to make suggestions at a later meeting that we can add to, but we cannot take away from the language that was in place before January 3 of 2012. So I would like to reinstate this as it was, but I am open for COSADC and City Council to tweak this and to look at this and to come back with further strengthening as long as it is not minimized, and that will be my motion. Will you second that, Rodney?
I'll second that.
Okay. Do we have any further comment?
Is that a motion or a move?
I move that.
Thank you.
We're just going to put it back in, but nothing, we're not going to change anything, and we will give COSADC the opportunity to tweak this. Fair enough, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner, do you have a comment? Tell us who you are.
Yes, my name is Jim Turner, and I think one of the things that needs to be looked at after all of this is done, there are some changes to the charter that we have been talking about, and I think strengthening the ethics that's actually in the city charter should be put before the voters to give them the opportunity to make sure that the city council guidelines, the ethics guidelines for the city council, board, staff, etc., is stronger than what we have now just because of the state, and without a special effort in going before the citizens, they can't change them and downgrade them again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Identify yourself, please.
Good morning. My name is Jerry C., and I'm a member of WTOS. I'm glad that you brought this up because that's been a topic of discussion between myself and several other people because of some of the things, the past practices. And we all know that some things that is done or has been done, it's not against the law, but it's not ethical. And actually, really, it should be against the law. So I applaud you for bringing this back up in protection of I say the reputation of our lawmakers in the city of San Angelo. I think this is something that really does need to be done, and something that really it needs to be looked at very carefully, because it don't really look very good out here from a common man that's paying taxes and really have no say. We thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments? If not, yes,
If I
ma'am.
understand the motion, you are requesting at this time that we go ahead and reinstate the eligibility of applicants as on page 9 of the previous bylaws that is in place now. Is that correct?
That's good. Add what she just said to my motion, please. Will you still second that? Yes. Motion has been made. I will now ask for all of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick.
Motion passes 7-0. Yes, Mr. Silvas.
My green light is gone. The wire's covered. No, but the LLC and the LP and the FCS and all that, and you can add that.
Mr. Sneeman's going to work on that, and just as soon as you can get something together, bring that back, and we can just add another number onto this and keep adding to it. That agreeable, sir?
Yes.
Very good. I appreciate you bringing that up, Winky. That's important. All right, let's move on now to our next item. What time is it? 9:45? We got another 15 minutes before we break? Everybody all right? Let's move on then to number 9, and I believe you wanted to pull that, Rodney. So if you want to make a motion, if you want to move.
I move that we remove our table number 9.
Okay, we've had a motion to table number 9. It has been seconded. Any discussion? Council? Public? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? 7-0. Number 10, discussion and possible action concerning a 3.8 acre tract of land located on the Loop 306 frontage road and owned by the West Texas Christian Foundation, aka Christian Village Property. This is Councilman Wardlaw. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The West Texas Christian Foundation is a charitable organization, and their attorney is Mr. Jim Carter. I don't know, come on up, Jim, if you want to, and let me make a presentation. You can fill in the blanks, and we'll
My name
go.
is James Carter. Go ahead.
Yeah. Most of you will remember that Jim Carter, attorney, came and made a presentation several council meetings ago concerning the problem out there on the frontage road, Loop 306, where the Christian Village property is, that most of you know the location of. It's a 150-unit apartment complex dedicated to low-income retirees. They have to be over 65, do they not, Jim?
That's correct.
All right. In addition to this Christian Village complex, which has been there for many years now, and I think Jim was one of the founders of that project, they are now constructing townhomes and other housing out there in the immediate area to the east. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
About how many additional units have you constructed, and how many do you have?
I'll have to ask Mark Davis to tell us.
106.
106.
Okay, and these are also low-income housing?
That's correct. Well, no, they're not.
They're not?
These are for 65 or older, but they're not based on low income.
Okay.
Is that right, Mark? 55 are for a low income.
Okay.
Excuse
Yeah.
me.
All right, and then as a part of all of this land that was acquired out there by the West Texas Christian Foundation, you have 2 or 3 acres, plus or minus, that are located adjacent to the Christian Village to the west on the access road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And at some point in time, when all that was going on and the construction was had out there on Loop 306 and the subdivisions to the south of Loop 306, they put in a culvert there, and basically, to make a long story short, it flows water during rains diagonally across this 2 or 3 acres, and it's even so forceful and drastic that it has cut a channel or an arroyo diagonally through your property. Is that not correct, Mr.
That's
Carter?
correct.
And so you've had this property on the market numerous times in the past, I understand, and it's now not marketable because of the sort of flood problem and the flood easement that the city does not in fact have.
That's correct.
And would the West Texas Christian Foundation be willing to entertain an offer if the city got an appraisal on this property to find out what the fair market value of it is?
Yes, the foundation would, as we understand it. If I may explain, this problem really came to the forefront in '95 when we had the large rain, and that really cut a 4-foot deep ravine through the property. And we've been back to this city council several times, and each council acknowledged the problem and it needed to be cured. And I believe a study was done by Mr. Bailey, and it's my understanding that it would cost millions to correct the problem, to divert the water to the Red Arroyo. So the foundation has discussed it and would be willing to sell the property at its fair market value to the city to solve the problem, and so that the foundation then can use that money to further its charitable purpose.
And a couple things we need to clarify for the record. Number one, the city has no flood or flowage easement over and across your property, does it?
None whatsoever. We were asked many years ago, back in the '70s, if that could be temporarily done, but there is no easement granted.
And am I correct in saying that you've had this property listed with realtors off and on for some time now and have been unable to market it because of the flooding problem?
That is correct.
All right. I'll just say, as an attorney and former law partner, Mr. Carter, years and years ago, I know for a fact this is a legal problem that the city has. And I think Mr. Carter will agree with me, that you just can't, city or no other property owner can flow water across somebody else's land in a condensed fashion like that. That's illegal, and it's sort of an inverse type condemnation. And I think that the West Texas Christian Foundation has been more than patient with the city of San Angelo, because I've looked at the correspondence. It's been more than 10 years you've been asking for the city to do something.
Yes, it's been over 10 years.
And now we probably have the funds, and we're told that we have the funds in the storm and flood water program, and so that's why I'm going to move here in a second to authorize an appraisal from either Stribling Proband or Kevin Hoffman. Or would those people be satisfactory to the West Texas Christian Foundation for fair market value appraisal?
Yes, they would be.
All right, and again, this is the West Texas Christian Foundation is obviously a charity, and is its primary purpose or is to provide housing for elderly and low-income people?
That's correct.
Okay. And how long has that foundation been in existence, Jim?
It's been in existence since the late '70s. The actual construction won until about 1981.
And it's got about 150 units, correct?
That's correct.
In the original Christian Village.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all the questions I have.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the council authorize an appraisal of this property. And it can be in the form of a letter appraisal rather than a real expensive thick book type appraisal, so that this the fair market value of this property can be disclosed to the city, and then the council can decide what to do with it, and hopefully plug it in the storm and flood water funds for this calendar or fiscal year.
We have a motion And we have a second. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Quimby?
Mr. Carter, how much was the property for sale for when, in the past, when it was put on the market?
We asked Steve Eustace, who was the latest realtor, and a portion of it was in the range of $440,000. And that didn't include the part that's separated by the drainage ditch.
Okay.
I just would like to mention that was in my district until just this last year. The citizens of Christian Village have a garden, a big community garden. And would it be y'all's desire after, if we do purchase the property, to allow them to continue to do their garden for as long as?
Yes, if the city would permit it, it would be welcome. The residents do enjoy their garden.
Thank you.
And Charlotte, you're familiar with all of the studies that the city's done, and in particular, I believe Clinton Bailey. Can you tell the council about how much the options would be?
I had asked Clinton back in January of this year to give us some ideas or some ways that this could be fixed by the city. And on February 1st, 2013, he provided a letter that item number 1, Loop 306 Access Road project, and what it consisted of, $3,608,000. His second recommendation was College Hills Boulevard at North Fork, Arroyo, to the tune of $4,711,259. Or number 3, another way to do it, but it would cost $4,637 to repair. And this came about from a storm in 97, excuse me, May 28th of 97, when there was a huge rainstorm that eroded, and then city trucks or highway trucks, I do remember them going in and allowing the water to flow free, which made the ditch deeper.
We had a problem before 1997 or 95 when the flood. It was a small ravine through the property, but when that rain came in 95 to 97, it made it much wider, and it's like a waterfall.
And in the original plot that was done back then, there wasn't any kind of drainage or anything there. It's just water erosion and through there, and then folks came along with some big trucks to help it move along, and then another rain, but then the drain is there big now.
That's correct.
For whoever worked on it.
During the August 6th meeting, we showed you maps and aerial photographs of the property where, when it was acquired, there was no drainage ditch, and after it was built, how the drainage ditch developed. If someone needs those, I'll furnish them again.
Mr. Barton?
Jim, you said in your last presentation that it was kind of a combination thing between the work that was done by the city and the work that was done by the state, as far as the roadways go, that caused this drainage to occur?
Yes, we first went to the state and complained that the construction of 306, Loop 306, was a major factor. And the state went out there and came back and said, we determined it's not a state problem, it's a city problem, that where the drainage is occurring is because of the development and the streets west of 306. And if you go out there, all that development drains under 306 across the property.
Okay. So in your opinion, it's not a state problem along with ours, or?
I believe the state's correct. Okay. I've been out there many times, and especially if it's a hard rain, you can easily see all that water coming down the streets to the west of 306, the loop.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Marty?
So you wouldn't be in favor of us saying it's a state problem and go back to the state?
If we can show the state that it's their problem, I'll be glad to. I haven't been able to do that.
I appreciate that, Mr. Carter. I just want to make sure I understand the motion. We are going to get appraisals and come back and decide then what to do?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe that's step one, is to see how much we're looking at.
Okay. And If I may say, Mayor, I think the appraisal needs to be as the property is without the drainage ditch. I think the appraiser needs to be instructed to that effect.
Why would that be? I mean, isn't the
Well,
problem the drainage or?
The drainage ditch, but that's what's caused the devaluation of the property. So I think the value of the property needs to be determined without the drainage ditch.
Was the drainage ditch there when you advertised it with Steve Eustace to sell it?
It was.
Were you willing to sell it then?
No, only
with the
thing-
drainage ditch?
No, sir. The only thing that was offered was the property lying north of the drainage ditch, not the property lying south of the drainage ditch.
The drainage ditch was caused by the construction of these subdivisions south and west of Loop 306, which would be caused by a city problem. You would not give the city a credit on their appraisal for actions that the city is responsible for. That doesn't make any sense. And Jim's absolutely right about that. And the appraiser needs to understand that it's not the fault of the West Texas Christian Foundation. And Jim provided topo maps showing that the ditch wasn't there originally, and it was just, as he explained, as a result of a particular flooding and the construction of all of the facilities under Loop 306, and the city has got some collection areas south of 306 that collects the rainwater running down the street and funnels it through that culvert. So Jim's absolutely right about that, and if that's necessary, that would be part of my motion, that it would be, that the appraisal would be fair market value unencumbered by the drainage ditch, which is what's caused the loss in marketability of the property and probably destroyed it.
Daniel?
Mayor, council members, my recommendation, to be honest with you, is to have a true assessment before we start assigning whose responsibility it is. When we start saying that it's the city or the state, for the longest time, the city was saying it was the state, and the state was saying, well, it wasn't us. Just to say that it is the city's responsibility at this point without a true assessment, I definitely recommend against that.
I'm gonna re-urge my motion.
Again, you have my thoughts on that. I just feel that before we start talking about paying what, right now, if we're going to do an appraisal, I would prefer that we do an appraisal based on what's there at this point, unless we determine by assessment that it truly was the city's responsibility.
We
At
can
that
do an
point, we can take a
appraisal
look at that.
as is and as was. There's an as will be, or as is, or the appraisal as is, and what it was before the ditch was made wider and wider and wider.
It's my understanding, City Manager, that's been decided by prior City Council that it is the city problem. It should be in your files.
Perhaps, from a staff perspective, we tried to approach these situations in a way that gives council some options. So perhaps without making a decision about where the fault lies, we can proceed with direction to the appraiser to give us a variety of assumptions, including, for example, if someone created damage or impaired the value, we would need to know both values, the before and the after value. And that also gives council some options to negotiate for either the purchase of the property or for settlement of a damage claim. And so perhaps we can pursue the appraisal issues with a variety of options for council in mind.
Would you agree with that, Mr. Wardlaw?
We're having two appraisals.
Before and after?
I'm not sure that's the right terminology, is it, Jim? One before and after, but at a current value, not back before the point of time. It'll have to be current fair market value. As long as that's the case, I don't have any problem with it before and after.
I have no problem with it.
Were you all right with your second on that, Charlotte?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Mr. Carter, I just wanted to add that I remember this item coming up to us years ago. You know, we've all slept since then. I wish that you guys would have brought some kind of photos or pictures for us to, you know, just bring back our memories, what it is we're dealing with. But I agree, Winky, I'm with you in Charlotte. Hey, if we need to do an assessment or an appraisal to get this remedied, I'm for it, you know. Excuse me, but I just think that we need to take it one step at a time. If that's the first step, I'm for it. But I wish I could see exactly, and I don't remember, and I'm trying to visualize what it is back there, what it looks like, and I just can't remember. But I wish you guys would have brought something. I'm okay with taking it one step at a time.
Very well. We've got a motion. We've got a second. Any further, council? Any public discussion on this item? Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself, and you have the floor, ma'am.
I am Billy DeWitt, and I'm a taxpayer. And I had no idea I'd be getting up to this microphone twice in 2 consecutive meetings. But I guess I have a question before I have a comment. I heard that it was, what caused this was Loop 306. Then I heard it was the subdivisions that were built west. Then I heard it was rains in 1995. So is it all of the above? What caused the problem?
I don't think anybody in the city's ready to take responsibility, but, so I guess it could be a portion of all of the above.
The only reason I ask that is because when something happens, when somebody builds, if it impacts a citizen's property, we come here and ask y'all to pay us an exaggerated amount for that property that's no longer worth that amount. I mean, you know, to me, that's going to be opening a can of worms. And the property was purchased, just like we purchase our homes or whatever. If something happens, then we, you know, have to deal with that. We have to figure out what to do about that. I don't think it's right to come before the city and ask the city to pay $4 million for something that the city was not directly responsible for. And that's my comment. And I think if you approve something like that, you're going to be opening a can of worms for this city that will be in lawsuits forever. Thank you.
Appreciate you, and that's why we're asking for 2 estimates, and it will come back to the city council, and we will discuss it, and at that time, we can make a decision. Charlotte.
But can I clarify, please, the people are not asking $4 million for their property. The city has estimated that that's what it would cost to correctly repair it. And the four number on the 400,000 is the possible value of the property. I just wanted to make that clear for the lady.
After we get some appraisal values, then we'll have some concrete figures to work with. Any other public comment? If not, we're going to call for the vote. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. No nays. That is a 7-0 vote. At this time,
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. At this time, I think it's time to take a little bit of a break. And if there is someone from the convention center here that could come and break this candy up in little pieces, I'm going to put it out front and want everybody to come up and get a piece of Hershey's chocolate. Everybody enjoy it. So if someone from the convention center could come forward and cut this up, we'll prepare it during the break. Let's take a break. 23. The meeting's been called back to order. We are now ready for number 11. This is consideration of authorizing staff to negotiate an agreement in substantially the attached form with artist Raul R. Ruiz to design, create, and install a bronze sculpture depicting a policeman together with a child to be installed on the outdoor premises of the headquarters building of the San Angelo Police Department at 401 East Beauregard in an amount not to exceed $100,000 and allowing the city manager to execute an agreement between the city of San Angelo and Raul R. Ruiz. Chief, take it away, sir.
I'll give you a quick history. Back in 2003, late 2003, a group of our employees tried to get together and create a police memorial monument of a sort to remember officers that have died in the line of duty. We started that process in 2004. Almost at the end of 2004, the Tom Adams at the time was able to come up and council approved, and they gave us $30,000. to put towards the monument, but we were looking at well over $100,000 in the monument. And in recent times, in recent years, now, and first I'll tell you this, that that the San Angelo Police Department has never had a monument to memorialize those officers that have died in the line of duty. We've had 2 that have died in the line of duty while serving San Angelo. Charles Anderson, in October 26, 1919, was electrocuted while on patrol with the chief trying to fix a light downtown. And then Odell Wagner died August 6 in 1955 while doing escort for a funeral service. He was struck by another vehicle. And so we've never done anything other than what we have a picture of them inside our office. You know, there used to be a fire department memorial in front of the city hall. I believe it's been moved. I'm not exactly sure where. They have one at their office now. And so what I felt when Officer Padron passed, we started trying to bring this back to life. And I thought of some different options, and the options were that we create some type of monument, a sculpture. We're looking at 3/4 size. We have roughly $40,000 raised right now. I need about another 50, but we're going to ask for donations to do that, not through public funds, unless the council wants to give us anything they want to give us. But we're asking for permission to go into this contract negotiation and to handle this up to $100,000. So you can see a display. The size of the actual sculpture will be 3/4 size, sitting on top of a pedestal. We hope to have it at our facility now, one of the flower beds on the west side of the building. And it will be there until council provides us a new facility, and then we will move our monument to the new facility. So you can see a picture drawing on the bottom, and then this is a 16-inch, I believe.
Mr. Mayor, I'll start off, and let me just say I have worked with Raul Reese on other projects, and he's always come through and has done tremendous work throughout the city, ASU, like it's mentioned in the background. But yeah, I'll make a motion that we can go into this contract, and a lot of the contributions that would come towards this project, I think it's very much, there's folks out there that are interested in being a part of this. So I'll make a motion that we proceed with this contract with Mr. Reese.
Waiting for a second.
I'll second that.
Authorized negotiation, yes.
Authorized negotiation. Council?
I'm not clear what you're asking for, Tim.
We have because of the expense that we're going to spend, the money, the contributions will be coming into the police department and held in a city account. And because there's a contract involved, and because of the amount over 50, we have to have council approval to spend that money. So we are going to be under 100 for the entire project, but that's why I'm here, to get approval to continue with the contract negotiations, complete the contract up to $100,000 on this project.
Yeah, so you're going to raise the money is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And this is just a ministerial act you're requesting that we approve, and is the $100,000 going to pay for the work done on the sculpture too?
It should pay for everything, $100,000. If we can hit $100,000, that should cover a lot of things. That would probably even help us pay for the monument stones for the officers that have passed around the sculpture, but it should cover the entire project.
Okay.
Ms. Foreman?
Where are we going to get the 100,000?
I'll raise it.
You'll raise it? Okay.
Well, I don't need that much right now. I've got
Well,
$40,000, but
I questioned Michael here not too long ago. I had heard you mention the $30,000 that the city had already given for that project, and I was curious as to how long a commitment is that $30,000. Does it stay there forever and ever and ever till it's used, or does it go back into general fund?
it's been in
Now-
our account, and it's been rolled over every year.
Well, we approved in 2004 $30,000. And I found that it's in the books, it's there, and since then, there's been another $3,500 added to that $30,000. And you're saying that you're gonna need, I heard 40,000, then another 50,000, that's 120,000 altogether.
Okay, no, we're sitting at about 35,000 in the account. Sergeant Herndon, who started the project in 2003, has another account that is separate from this one, he raised some money, and I don't remember. He raised 4,500, so he has 4,500 to put to that. So it's not that I need 120. I'll actually, the cost of the project, we're expecting for the sculpture to be about $78,000. But then I have to look at also buying the rock that it's going to sit on, and maybe a little bit of landscaping, and then the monuments to go around it. So if I can raise $64,000 in a campaign for the police chief, I think I can raise another $40,000 for a police memorial monument.
Okay. Worst case scenario, devil's advocate, don't raise it. Michael, where we get the money?
Well, my understanding is the project is contingent upon the chief raising the funds, that authorization to proceed with construction won't occur until the funds sufficient to complete the project are raised. I think he's just wanting to negotiate a contract at this point, and we'll need to work the controls in place so that construction does not proceed until the adequate funds are raised.
It's no money out of the general fund. You're doing all this on your own. You're going to raise the funds.
Right. Right.
You know, it's a no-brainer to me, so.
Right.
Put me down for 50, Tim.
Okay, down.
But with the
And I don't have to file a campaign report, so your name won't be on there.
And we forgive the idea behind it all. It's not money. It's some of these folks that have given their lives for the freedom that we live in. So, we need to focus on that. And if this is a representation of that.
If you attend any of our functions, especially during Police Week, we always congregate on the west side of the building. And that's when we honor officers that have died in the line of duty throughout the United States, but mostly in Texas. And we really would like to have something here. You're right, it doesn't happen often. One of my concerns is when you think about the violence that we're dealing with now, we've had 3 or 4 officer involved. We have 3 officer-involved shootings in the last few years. The potential for something like this to happen in our community again is high, and so I would like to be sure that we've covered our bases. And again, the monument's for everybody to attend, but we want to memorialize the officers that have died, giving their life, in the line of duty here in our community.
Further council comment? Mr. Self?
I just had one question. The contract is set up, Ms. Bowling, not to start till the funds are there?
Excuse me?
The contract is set up such that the project will not begin until the funds are available?
The contract has compensation provision that hasn't been decided, and then it has a schedule, a scope of services, but I'll go ahead and include a provision that will reflect exactly what you're stating. It's just a standard agreement, quid pro quo, but I will make sure there's a mechanism in the document. I worked on the contract, and I'll make sure that there is a mechanism that the inception of the work is contingent on the funds.
Okay, thank you.
I think she said yes.
Yes. We'll add it. If it's not in there, we'll add it.
Okay.
Do we have any public comment? If not, we have a motion that we approve this and give the chief the chance to get started raising his funds. We have a second. I would ask that all in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Mark it 7-0, please, ma'am.
Chief, is that Tom on there, our officer, security officer?
No.
No? It kind of resembles.
Does it look?
He wears a crew cut, so we altered that a little bit. So the crew cut was just a little too militaristic.
Or even Mr. Hendren, they're kind of like Herndon.
I think it looks like Tom.
Yeah.
What did you say he was going to put this?
Yeah, it's Tom.
And I'd like to introduce, for those who haven't, Raul Reese, the artist. So thank you, Raul, for all that you do for this community. Thank you, sir.
All right, we decided that we would move item 12, which is a budget discussion, to the end of the agenda. 12 is made up of 3 parts. So that takes us to number 13, that's Carl White's. Consideration of prioritizing additional improvements to the river project with the remaining dedicated funds for the project. Mr. White, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. Should be able to move for this fairly quickly since the council's seen the majority of this about a month ago. About a month ago, we came to you and gave you a presentation update on the river project, and we talked about some of the monies that we have left from the project and talked about some of the things we'd like to consider doing. At that last meeting, though, the caption was written such that council couldn't take action. It is written now such that council could take action, and we are asking council to give us some direction with the funds that are remaining from the river project. These are dedicated funds to the river project. They can only be spent on the river project, and give us some direction as to what staff should work on after the contracted portion of the project, which should be wrapping up in the middle to the end of September. Specifically, with the funding that we have left over, is going to be about $900,000. Previously, council had set aside $500,000 as a reserve, and since the last meeting, council has made a decision separately to purchase some property between 19th and 29th Streets, so that is going on. We're asking council specifically to authorize staff to set aside $50,000 set aside for pruning of trees along the river, which we'll need to do this fall and next spring. With all those commitments right now, we've got about $300,000 left. We're also asking council to give us some direction. One of the major projects we'd like to do after the project is some drip irrigation, primarily for all the river trees along the river corridor from Oak Street to First Street, and trees in the golf course along Veterans Memorial Drive. We estimate this cost to be about $300,000. We were trying to consider putting this project in as a change order to the existing contract. We think it's best to separate that out and bid that out separately, and then bring it back to council for bid award. We are asking council to set aside some money for the restoration of the Putt-Putt Golf Course. We estimate that to be about $175,000. With that, we're asking council to consider setting up an ad hoc committee with 1 or 2 council members and some staff members, maybe a few other people, who we can get together with and create a vision for the restoration of this area and start working on that. We are asking council for us to do some infrastructure work after the project, which includes securing the loose river rock by the artwork, the turnaround parking by Cunningham, and the maintenance drive from El Paseo to the pumps. And then we aren't asking council to set aside river funds for additional signage and wayfinding, since this could be funded through hot funds. So we are asking council to give us some direction, take some action, give us some direction on some post-project items.
Yeah, and the one thing Carl also mentioned was that right now you have the designation of the $500,000 that council set aside at one point. That is something that you may choose to free up now to use for some of these or not. But right now it's sitting there, but it can be freed up to increase those available dollars, which are right now at $305. After you take all those things out, you may choose to free up that $5 to be applied toward some of these other items, such as the putt-putt area or whatever that priority may be.
All right, council, let's start with Ms. Farmer, then I have Johnny and anybody else.
Question, $500,000 that council wanted set aside. Shouldn't we continue to set that money aside to pay for maintenance from that area, from the bridge all the way to the softball complex, of items along the river?
Part of the river project funding was borrowed money, and we would not be able to use that portion for maintenance. We would need to make sure that the money we're setting aside for maintenance did not contain some restriction. I think there's some grant money in there, some bond money in there, and we'll need to examine exactly what remains and is it eligible for such a reserve.
Mr. Silvas?
Carl or Rick, remind me, are we still in phase 1 of the project? Is this phase 1 or?
We created the project based on the funds that we had available. The other phases, of course, would be further downriver or further upriver, but the council had given us direction with the funds that we had available to concentrate on the core downtown area.
Yeah, this would be the end of, I mean, we had different processes along the way. You know, dredging was a phase within that. And so really right now what we're in is the completion of the project that was designed, and that's scheduled to be complete here in a month or so. And so these, because we did well on managing the funds, we have some funds left from the original project, and these are those dollars, and so that's where we're trying to get. What do you want to do with those at this point?
And let me just add that I am very much in favor of, and first of all, let me just say, this past Saturday, I happened to be driving along the river, and there was hundreds and hundreds of people down there. So, you know, I can already see what it's attracting them, the foot traffic. But I am very much in favor, and I don't know who else is on board with me, but I want a state-of-the-art miniature golf course down there for our kids that have nothing else to do but maybe the skate park, maybe the go skating, maybe bowling. But I think getting them outdoors in a nice, clean atmosphere is you know, I think it's good for the community. I'm also very much in favor of moving the project downriver. I heard just a while ago, and I've heard other comments of, hey, when do we start moving, even further east, all the way up to Bell Street, the Bell Street Lake? So I'm very much in favor of just moving forward. If we have something that we can, some seed money, to continue. I don't know if that's phase 2. I forget where we were on phase 2 or what part of it, it was going to be. But if we can just, the state-of-the-art miniature golf course, and I want to be, I volunteer to be on that committee. I would very much be interested in that. But again, just moving it further east is what I think there's a lot of interest from folks out there that, want to have just something revamped down there so they can enjoy. So
Johnny,
those are just my comments.
While you're on the golf course topic, one of the things we've been discussing is, of course, the reason nothing's done right there now at all is because there's a sewer line that runs through there, and we're having to replace that sewer line. So
Sure.
Ricky and his crew has been working on getting that bid out and so forth. Originally, our concept was to maybe try and save some of the existing putt-putt holes and redo them. As we've looked at that with Ricky, probably the most effective, cost-effective way for them when they're constructing this new sewer line through there is not to have to worry about whether you damage any of the concrete. It's to basically take that off, and then when we do one, we start over and lay it out in a manner that works well with the holes and so forth. So I guess from a council perspective, that is one thing. They're getting close to being ready to start on that sewer line. I want to make sure that council's okay with the concept of taking those out and starting over versus trying to work around them or retain any of them.
And I truly believe that you build it and they will come type of philosophy, because I've seen and I've been to, we were in Plano a couple of weeks ago at a miniature golf facility that was just amazing, and I always have wanted something like that. My heart is near and dear to the river area. I grew up right there. And so, the municipal was built, and it's heaven knows what it's doing. I know there's a lot of traffic. So I think our youth need something like that to, get them off of other things, maybe away from video games or whatever. But I think it's an investment that we really need to get serious about, because it'll be there for years to come,
And of course, once it's constructed, we'd like a private vendor to operate that.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's something that this committee may look at as well. We've had interest from the community about a public-private partnership, which is the concept here of if you allow paddle boats and other things down there, you start creating that synergy, and we bring someone in to work with the city to manage and operate that, and we run it in a public-private partnership manner.
If we don't use all these funds, what happens to them?
Those are dedicated funds through half-cent sales tax dollars that went specifically to the river project. So at that point, council had voted on those, designated them for this. So they would remain there for additional use at some point as council deemed for the river project, or if those dollars were not utilized totally by this project
and you wanted to move some of those to a project that was authorized by the sales tax under that same umbrella with the wording that would work, then you could do that.
Actually, there are multiple sources. Rick and Carl have been very good about pooling resources, funding sources to get projects done. And there are multiple sources in here, and we need to determine what the options were associated with each of those sources. So there are some options that exist.
Carl, what trees currently have drip?
Probably the ones only in the games court area. David, correct me if I'm wrong. This area here, because we couldn't put a traditional irrigation system in this section because of the decomposed granite and all the different activities, we put drip irrigation, subsurface drip, so we could water the trees there. That's the only area that has drip irrigation. The rest of the system that is currently being installed or already has been installed along the river is a traditional system.
Okay. Yeah, what the system does have in it is the current one that's going in is built with valves to accommodate adding drip onto it. So we built the system where you could add it in, but that games court area is the only one that's installed with that, mainly because we took all the grass out and it's DG everywhere. So we put in that drip around the trees and covered it all with decomposed granite.
Mr. Wardlaw?
Yes, a couple things. Number one, has just been stated, I think we need more information on the source of these funds and the limitations on the expenditure of the same before we make a decision. I don't feel like I have enough information to make a prudent decision on all these items. I think we need to do more work on it. And in that connection, I'll make a couple of comments. The additional signage and wayfaring down along the river, that, as is pointed out, can be funded under hot funds, and I would probably favor that over taking it out of the river funds. The drip irrigation system for river trees, I may not be for that, but I think the council needs to get an opinion and more information from John Begno, who's forgotten more about landscaping than the rest of us will ever know. I'm for watering those trees down there, and Shane tells me, which some of us know, that we can water those trees down there right now with the irrigation system that we've had and that's been in place. And so that may obviate the necessity of spending $297,000 for a new drip system. I'm concerned about spending that money on that where we already have a system, albeit not a perfect system. I'm concerned about putting in a drip irrigation system among those trees where you're having to cut roots on old or pecan trees and live oak trees, in addition to the expenditure of money. And one of the concerns I had staff indicate to me was that, well, the reason for putting in a drip irrigation system might be that people would drive along and see the grass under the trees being green from the system that we have now, and that doesn't bother me one bit. I'll vote to continue the existing system we have and use it for the trees, and I don't think many people will complain about that at all if we save $300,000 in using the system we have. And let me just reiterate one thing, and that is the current system that's out there is in different stations, and there are stations that water just basically the trees and not the golf course, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here, is to save all those trees. I haven't heard one person in the city of San Angelo that wants to see another one of these trees at the cemetery in Santa Fe Park die. And so anyway, I just think we need to look at it harder and have more information before we hopefully make a prudent decision on how to spend this money. And also, we've got another, seems to me, another question is how we're going to fund the monies for watering in Santa Fe Park and also Fairmount, and that is, do we exempt those city properties from the budget on that, which is what I favor, or do we allocate some money every year for payment of the water and just have it, the left hand give it to the right hand. And then the bad thing about that is you run out of money in the budget, and then the trees start dying, and that's what's been happening in the past, and I don't want to see that happen again. So those are just my thoughts.
Mayor, to answer a couple of those questions,
Yes,
I think Carl and I can speak fairly confidently that as far as the use or the availability of those dollars, our grant obligations have been met. We met those while we were doing the project. So these dollars that we're telling you are available don't have existing grant obligations that we have not met. We met those when we did the project. So these dollars are available to use on the river project. Now, there may be restrictions on how the debt was issued, that you can't use that for maintenance. I can't answer that question, but as far as these dollars as we presented them, those are available to be used on the river project. There should not be any restriction against you using them for anything on the river project that you so choose. Whether or not you can take those and transfer them to a different project, I think you can, as long as it's in a voter-approved sales tax project, because these dollars that remain are going to be sales tax dollars. We've spent our grant dollars. We spent those up front with the project that was authorized. So hopefully that'll answer a little of your questions concerning how they can be spent.
Mr. Silvas?
Carl, go back one slide. Now, I know that we have already cut down some of the dead trees along the river. I think I've seen some that have been. How much of money did we spend there? And then where do we apply this additional $50,000 on the tree work? Tell me where we are, how much we spend, and then where this applies.
David may have to remind me how much the cost was for the removal of the trees, because it was taken out of the landscape allowance for the project. Virtually all that tree removal work has been done. A lot of the
trees?
Excuse me?
90 trees?
I think it was more 68.
60? Okay.
Good morning, David Knapp. Yeah, there are 68 trees that were removed as part of the project. We, as part of the landscape allowance, we used, I think it was about 40,000 to remove the final 61. So some were included in the original bid. We knew we had to remove trees, and the rest were added on to as we determined which ones were, not going to make it or were already past the point.
So I guess my question is, the additional trees, is it to plant new trees, or?
I think it's
the 50,000 here is for tree pruning work. We're gonna have to do some of that pruning this fall, this winter, and next spring. A lot of that is really would be allocated to tree pruning. Okay. If there's any remaining, we could put it towards tree planting.
Yeah, and you'll notice a lot of those, even we did it at City Hall, that have a bunch of dead branches in them, and it just really, if we're going to save the tree, it just really makes it look tidy and finishes up. You'll also notice a few trees, and I think we talked with you about it, Johnny, that remain where we topped them.
Yes.
Because there's a desire from sort of the artist standpoint to take some of those larger stumps and carve them into some things that we use along the river instead of just chopping them off. So you'll see a few of those that remain.
That would have to go to the Art Commission for consideration.
So then the trees have been cut so far, has been between 14th and Irving?
First Street and Concho Avenue.
What? Say again?
Concho Avenue upriver to First Street.
Okay.
By the high school.
We still have a ways to go, even further downriver, that we haven't touched.
Below 14th Concho Avenue, I think there's a few trees, but I think our plan is to have staff remove those. There's not near as many dead trees left in that section.
You may take a peek at the ones at Kids Kingdom. Those are of some concern. The kids down there and possibly a branch breaking off. So.
Right. There's definitely additional tree work, and the reason for this allocation would be to do additional tree work after the project.
Ms. Farmer?
I'm all for saving the trees and watering the park and the cemetery and forever and ever. I guess I'm hung up on the drip irrigation, the price. That was surprising. When we had talked, when we went down on the river, I just didn't fathom it being almost $300,000. But are you talking about installing a drip irrigation system like in the new park where you have when it goes down, and then it circles out to where the tree roots would be, and then goes down and circle out, putting in a new system instead of tapping into the existing system to do a drip irrigation?
It would be both. With the brown shaded section along the river, we designed that and are installing that such that it could be added on quite easily. So that section is about half the estimated cost, about $150,000. The other cost, the rest of the cost would be along the golf course. That would be a separate system. It would have its own separate meter. And we would basically have to start from scratch on that system.
And the control of that system, since it's in the park where we have a leaseholder in there, who controls the timing and the number of watering, et cetera, and so forth on there?
For that system, it would be the city.
Yeah, and that's one reason that one would be separate. It would separate the golf course from that area as far as the system. And Mr. Wardlaw's right in regard to on the trees, and that's one reason with us bidding it out, if we are to install the drip, doing it this fall, this winter would be better, because if you're trenching around, you don't want to cut those roots when the tree's stressed already. So we're doing the watering now, and we've got that system up and running, as y'all talked about, and staff did a good job in getting that done. But so we've got a little time for y'all to give us the direction that we want to go as we discuss that.
If you're not ready to make a decision on the drip irrigation, I would like some direction on the putt-putt golf course area and the remaining infrastructure items, the securing the loose rocks, the turnaround, and the maintenance drive.
Mayor,
post-contract items.
May I? One of the things I wanted to make clear when we talked about eligible uses of the funding, certainly continued improvement along the river, there's no question in our minds that those are eligible uses. I think what we want to make clear is that I think if I were sitting in your chair, I'd want to know, can we get a street paved with this leftover funding? And off the top of my head, I'd say probably not. This certainly, to the extent that funds were granted for the river project, you wouldn't be able to take those monies and pave a street. The closest you could come would be some kind of dedicated parking or parking associated with utilization of these improvements. So the question is, the borrowed monies, the big bulk of the money associated with the half-cent sales tax, that money that was borrowed, can that be utilized for paving of a street or a stormwater improvement facility, that kind of thing? And probably not. Those funds were borrowed with specific commitments associated with them. We told the purchasers of the bonds what we're going to use the money for, and that's what we need to do. And we can either, so it really, the short answer is it boils down to continuing the improvements that we borrowed the money for, or don't do any more improvements and use the money toward debt service.
Well, I want to keep some contingency funds in there. I don't want to spend everything we've got. And I'm more or less in agreement with Winky on that drip irrigation. And primarily because I don't want to cut the roots of those trees. And if we've got a system that's working, I don't see any reason in redoing it. But I'm ready to entertain a motion if someone's ready to make one.
I'd just like to say that the drip irrigation, I have a problem with the cost, but that is the most effective way, and it's a better way than what we're doing now. And we need to, I think we need to fine tune that, and I'm not sure how to fine tune it. The cost is high, but other than that, I would probably support it. Well,
just a clarification. What we're asking for is direction. Should we spend staff time on looking at the drip irrigation system, designing the specs for it, designing the system, and putting it out for bid? It still has to come back to council for award and consideration. So we're asking you, do you want us to spend our time on developing that?
Okay.
Yeah. I've got
Don?
one of the things, and I'm not sure we can spend it this way. My thought is we've got an irrigation system in place. I'd rather spend the money to put the water on the trees with what we have versus letting them die, and spend that money that way if we can. versus a whole new system. Or maybe even do it in phases as we receive the tax money, something like that. But $300,000 for expanding the drip irrigation with no more knowledge than I have right now, I'm not sure that would be my priority.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Carl, I didn't realize there was an existing system, because evidently it wasn't working if all these trees died. I know some of them died because of disease, but was it working?
It was several factors. We had to drain the river to do the bank stabilization.
Mm-hmm.
The irrigation system, we couldn't operate it because, one, in parts it wasn't operable, and two, we were in construction phase. We couldn't run the irrigation system. Three, it was the drought, the lack of the rainfall. Four, it's the trees that we lost were more species related. I mean, we lost the pecan trees, we lost red oaks. We didn't lose live oaks and some of the elm trees. So those are the main factors why that we've lost the trees.
Well, and then those also, depending on where they were, the ones that would be on the golf course side of the road would have been in the contract with 2Pro as far as, of course, their focus, and rightly so, is on the greens, not watering the roughs. These would fall in the roughs. So you had all those things as well, which in this case, those on the golf course side are under 2Pro's meter. So, we'll have to work all that out with them so that they're not responsible for paying for us trying to, and we've had those discussions, but there's a lot of factors.
I was going to finish. I'm certainly, again, in favor of moving forward with negotiations or whatever you have to do with a private-public type of miniature golf area there. And then the turn, because I'm looking at that list, and that's way over the 300,000 or the 800,000. So this council person's interest is that miniature area for our youth. Okay, if we need to go back and rehash the irrigation system, I say go back and tweak it or whatever we have to do. But I'm certainly in favor of moving forward for the youth of the city.
Mr. Fleming.
The way I look at it, if we take the drip irrigation out of there and we add up the items, the putt-putt area, the loose rock by the artwork, and the turnaround by Cohenheim, and the maintenance drive by the El Paso to the pumps, that adds up to $275,000. That's not including the contingency. Well, we had the 500 set aside over there, and we had 300 and some thousand left over. I would move that we do the things I just said, and we leave that extra money in there, and we look at that at a later date, and we'll see if we need it at that time. But that's what I would like. I would move that we accept those things and move forward on doing those things.
Say that again, Rodney. Just tell us exactly what you're saying.
I move that we go ahead and use the 300,000. It's actually going to be less. It's going to be 275,000 to extend, or not, to restoration of the putt-putt area, secure the loose river rock by the artwork, do the turnaround by Cohenheim, and do the maintenance drive by the El Paso to the pumps. All those things added together are $275,000.
So you're saying then pull the 150 out for signage and pull the 297
Yeah,
out?
the signage needs, I agree with Winky on that. We need to try to get hot to do that on the signage.
Yes.
And really, we don't have the money. The previous council set aside $500,000. If you set aside that $500,000, we only have $305,000. This would get under that, and then we're probably going to have a few things that are going to come up here in this next year anyways, and then we'll have a little bit of money to do those things if we need them. That's what I move.
Thank you. I concur with that.
I'll second the move. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
Or the motion.
500, the 500,000 contingency, it was set aside based on spending what kind of funds?
It's the river project funds, but at the time, some of the council members had talked about fountains for the river.
Oh, don't start that again.
Sorry.
Don't. So
don't go there.
Well, the whole deal is those dollars were set aside by council specifically for some purpose. So they're not attached to anything at this point.
But the river project was how much?
Oh, the total river project?
Yes.
The total is 16 million, but this last contracted portion is with the contingency 9.6 million. Well, it's more with that with the change orders. It's about 10.2.
I was gonna say about 10 million.
And I guess my point is, I understand having a $500,000 contingency on 10 million, a $500,000 contingency on 900,000. That doesn't make sense. But if we have a motion and a second, let's move on.
And the motion is to spend $275,000, and that is your second, Mr. Silvas? Yes, sir. Have any further council comment on this? Then I'm opening it up to the public. Do we have any comment from the public on this? Okay, the motion has been made that we do everything except the signage and the irrigation for a $275,000. Yes, sir?
Well, we're not doing it, we're just addressing staff to move forward and
to
receiving.
negotiate,
Okay.
yes.
Do some plans.
It'll
Yes.
come back to us.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll
Yes.
add that we'll also, even though we're not taking action on that irrigation item, what we'll do is internally look at the existing system and see if there are ways to tweak that system to make it more effective in watering the trees. And if those are tweaks we can make and manage within our current budget, not going into these dollars, then we'll look at making those minor adjustments.
Okay.
Very well.
I've got one more question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
What happens after all these funds are gone? Where is it? Is that it for the half-cent sales tax monies that
Well,
were
the
allocated?
thing that you do have remaining, yes, those are, the thing that you do have remaining, though, is out of these dollars, we purchased the Edgewater property. So at the time, the thought is that once that property sells, those dollars would come back to the river project. So those are dollars that could come back to fund additional things. You know, our hope is, as Johnny mentioned, even going east, you know, it doesn't need to stop. The bank stabilization going east has got to happen. It's got to happen all the way to the sports complex. The UCRA has been great in partnering with us to get some grant dollars to do that. So these may be some future seed dollars that we can leverage for grant dollars to actually make some of that stuff happen. Charlotte?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious, I recall in the original plans for the downtown, the river, all of it, the things that we wanted to do, and I distinctly remember using some of our existing rock that's cut in the shape of picnic tables and having cut in there, you know, like a checkerboard, checkers or Cheshire, in picnic tables. I know we've got it, you know, that, but the area at Kids Kingdom that goes up to Concho Street, that area up there, there's nothing but grass, where we had the memorial for the Hunt for Heroes recently, is an area that could use some picnic tables. I don't recall what the expense of those were. It wasn't enormous, but
I think that you're right in some of the areas, and what we're hoping is that when we actually finish out the project, let's finish it out, and then see where we remain in dollars. And what we want to do at that point is really walk the river, because sometimes when you can finish the project, move the contractor out, you can walk through and see, okay, we need to spend a few dollars here and there to do some fine tweaking. We need some picnic tables here, and we really intend to do that, I think, once we move the contractor out and then walk it. And I think we'll notice some other things as well that just need some final tuning. And so that's why the good thing of having some dollars to do that. But we agree, we need to look at those once we're done and walk it.
Motion has been made and seconded, but I would also like to say that river also goes north, and we also need to work toward 14th Street and on down to 29th Street to tie into Kirby Park. So the river goes from one end of town to the other, so let's keep that in mind as well when we get extra funds.
And we are buying your land to make sure that
Yes.
trail connection
Yes.
happens, so we're thinking about that as well.
That's right, and I know.
$50,000 investment.
That's why I haven't said anything. The motion has been made.
And I thought that was because you were the mayor, that you hadn't said anything.
Well, I just wanted to make it known. The
hard.
mayor serves the entire city. The motion has been made. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Put a 7-0 on that one as well, please, ma'am. All right, that got us through 14. Now we are ready. No, that got us through 13. Now we're ready for 14. I understand that possibly you would like to postpone this, Marty. Tell me what you think, sir.
Yes, we currently have staff. We've been working with staff, with Rick and AJ about what exactly our ETJ rights are, and they've been working with the county, and I understand it's illegal, and so I'd like to just postpone it until the legal gets through looking at it, and then they can present it back.
You made that in form of motion, didn't you?
I move that we table it until then.
Second.
Okay. 14 is discussion and possible direction on items related to the city's authority within the exterritorial jurisdiction. the ETJ. And we have had a motion and a second to postpone this till a later date until we have more information.
Yes.
Council discussion. Public discussion. All of those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Put a 7-0 on that one as well, Ms. Ramirez. Okay, now we're to item number 15, which is discussion and possible action regarding excess hotel occupancy tax receipts. Our Finance Director, Tina Bunnell, you have the floor, ma'am.
I'm here to present the hotel occupancy, good morning, Mayor and council members. I'm going to present the hotel occupancy tax, the legal uses and restrictions. Can you not hear me? Sorry. Okay. So far, we've had the concept discussion with council. Today, we're going to discuss what the legal uses are and allowable expenditures are, and then it will be up to council whether they decide to take any action. 1/7 of the tax proceeds must be spent on advertising and promotion. We currently contribute $795,000 to the Convention and Visitors Bureau for that. Not more than 15% can be used for promotion of the arts, and we currently contribute 5% of our total revenues to that cause. For a municipality the size of San Angelo, the remaining revenue can be allocated at the direction of council. We contribute $708,000 for civic events for FY13. That's based on their annual budget, and the remaining surplus revenue is spent at the direction of council. Allowable uses of hotel occupancy tax revenues are for convention and visitor centers, convention registrations, advertising for the city, promotion of the arts. I'm moving through these kind of quickly. If y'all need me to slow down, I will. Just let me know. Historical restoration and preservation. Expenses directly related to a sporting event, as long as we can prove the correlation there. For promotion of tourism for existing sports facilities, such as the Texas Bank Sports Complex. You can use it for funding for transportation systems for tourists and for signage directing tourists to sites and attractions that are commonly visited by tourists. Other important information, the hotels are permitted to retain 1% of the hotel occupancy tax. Gives them an incentive for monitoring the stays and keeping them at less than 30 days if possible. Also, it's forfeited if they fail to submit their hotel occupancy tax to the city. For the 30-day exemption rule, I know that's come up once or twice, so just wanted to let you know that the guest must notify the hotel in writing prior to departure or prior to their stay in order for that to be granted. If they do not, they're only exempt after they pay the first 30 days hotel occupancy tax. Again, hotels have an incentive to encourage shorter stays because they do retain 1% for themselves. This is the 2012-2013 budget. Our actual revenue was $2.2 million, and the current revenue budget is $1.575 million. Year-to-date revenues, and this was at the end of July, were almost $2.3 million. And we project a revenue for the entire fiscal year of about 2.6. That is trending up a little and maybe closer to 2.7 this year. This is the civic events fund balance, just showing that we do have the 90-day reserve of about $500,000 there, and a surplus of $163,000. And then the Convention and Visitors Bureau return, they had $300,000 that they would return to us. I think it actually ended up being about $330,000. We do have that. So it'll be closer to $500,000 that we have estimated available for one-time projects. Eligible projects include the Fort Concho stables and air conditioning. These are some things that we discussed with the stakeholders, some ideas that they produced, and then we looked in to make sure that they were allowable expenses. Also, the Convention Center marquee, $15,000. Riverfest, we've discussed that at $30,000. The sewer line at the convention center is about $50,000. Beams at the visitor center would be about $30,000. There is some additional funding available for that through the capital projects fund, so that's why that's asterisked. Coliseum roof consultant would be about we estimate about $40,000. We don't really have a.
We don't know. At this point, we're just getting requests for proposals / qualifications. So I don't know. There may be $0 spent on a consultant. That'll be y'all's decision. We're working on bringing that back.
Tina, let me ask you.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the marquee,
Yes,
is
sir.
that it? $15,000?
No, sir. We would have some funds available from capital projects, I believe, for that. That would.
There's some funds from the remodel that they're holding that they would use to match this 15, and combined, they would install that marquee.
I'm
Good
very
question.
much in favor of marquee. I'll tell you that right now. So.
Same thing with the beams at the visitor center. I think there's some money available from the San Angelo Area Foundation to.
I don't remember it may be straight chamber money, but
Okay.
there's some match money that goes with that also. That was just a portion of the expense. In addition, I think they've developed a less expensive alternative to the sewer line project, but I don't know the latest on it.
Yeah, those are changing because we're researching it, and we've done a lot of studies on those, which we may have figured out a cheaper solution.
Any other questions on this slide?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Beams at the visitor center. Beams at the visitor center. I didn't think we owned the visitor center.
Through a state grant, the city participated, actually the city administered construction, but we partnered with the chamber and the Health Foundation in construction, and the request has come from the chamber through the CVB to participate in the replacement of these beams.
And each of those two have equal participation? I mean, it's going to cost $90,000 to replace beams, is that correct?
I don't recall what the split is. Phil Neighbors might be able to help. Sorry to put you on the spot, Phil.
That's all right. Phil Neighbors. The estimated cost right now is $60,000 to $80,000, but like these other projects, we're waiting on final estimates from the construction people who are estimating what needs to be done. It's a structural, two beams structurally where the hole is in the atrium of the visitor center, and the Health Foundation and the Chamber are each putting in $30,000
I
so
would
far.
have preferred to have seen that contribution instead of just the city paying for it, period, and when we don't own the building.
Do you have more projects on the next slide?
Yes. We ready to move on? Okay. Coliseum roof. This is obviously just an estimate. We don't really know until I think you've started working on looking at that project. Is that right? Okay. Wayfinding Phase 1, $300,000. This is just a baseline, just very baseline where the signs would be. It would not cover all of the areas of the city, but that's a starting point. The Wayfinding River Corridor at $150,000. A forklift, this would be for civic events so that they could put on larger productions like Sesame Street and some of those big shows that come in. They would use that for that. And then the sports complex, the irrigation and repairs, that's a project that would cost about $175,000 would also be eligible.
So in actuality, the Coliseum roof's going to cost $500,000 because you had $40,000 on the previous page.
I have no idea what it's going to, and that's what I told y'all last time at the meeting was really there, until we have someone come in and assess it, these were numbers that were put on it last year. So I really will not venture to, I mean, those are numbers they put on there, but I'll tell you right now, I have no idea, and I wouldn't even guess until we have someone officially that's qualified look at it and tell us. And that's kind of where I think they're going with today. What priorities, I guess, do you place on these? I think at the last meeting, y'all talked about the Coliseum being one of those high priorities that we needed to focus Additionally,
the wayfinding Phase 1, wayfinding could be done double that number depending on how much work council wants done. And wayfinding by itself could be a big enough project that we need to put a stakeholder group together and begin to prioritize what we would do work on first, and then how deep to get into it. I think they have a multi-phase approach developed for that, but really we would need to get into deeper conversations with council on that.
And y'all may want to look at them from not a money standpoint at this point. It's just my suggestion as to what are the priorities, and then let us work them out from there and try to hash out numbers that are more
Right.
perfect.
And like I said, we have about $500,000 in fund balance after the 90 days reserved, just from last fiscal year. So,
And based on this year's budget, possibly another $1 million?
yes,
At
additional
the
fund
end of-
balance.
At the end of September, at the end of next
September.
we're in August, right? At the end of September, we could have as much as another $1 million. And so, if we could get general direction, conceptual type direction, like the roof, this looks like a priority, get out there and sharpen your pencil. If we could get some of that, we don't have to have it today, but there are some things like the stables at Fort Concho that if we could get that moving quickly enough, we might have that AC installed by next year's season. And so if we knew what some of those general priorities were, we could have staff start working those up without direction or authorization to spend money. We could start tuning that up and bring back some more specific proposals for you. Again, the roof at the Coliseum is a concern, both from a protection of that asset standpoint and because we're uncertain about the total cost.
Mr. Sillis?
Tina or
Yes,
Rick,
sir.
I noticed that on the last slide, the $175,000 for the sports complex irrigation and repairs was not on our background. Okay, so that's the first time I see it. But that's one. My question to that is, when I see repairs, I automatically think damages. So are we repairing something that happened, went wrong, or?
A lot of what's happening at the sports complex, of course, we're moving into the, it's been there a little while, so there are repairs. The bulk of that would be with the irrigation system. When we put that in, the irrigation system is, of course, massive, and the amount of water that moves through there, because of the drought and so forth, the amount of water we were having to move through that system, in some cases would melt, literally melt, the valves and those kind of things. So we've got maintenance things that need to be addressed, primarily not because of vandalism or those kind of things, but due to use and due to the irrigation system and how we're having to use it so heavily and intensely, primarily associated with heat and drought.
And then two, on the wayfinding phase one and the river, is that, I think I just answered my question. The $150,000 was the same wayfinding amount that was on the river project?
That Carl just presented? What Carl just presented?
Right.
I believe so.
Okay, so the $300,000 then is what? I mean,
There were different components, y'all can add in, there's different, Phil may be able to answer, there are different components of the wayfinding study, and some of those, the one we broke out was the river component, which just tried to get you down to river elements. And then there's a whole nother aspect to the
the
wayfinding.
I looked at the master plan and kind of sectioned out what was going to be done for the river, kind of as a minimal to get things together. But in the whole package, it was done as a master plan with a company, and there is going to be a benefit if whatever we choose on the wayfinding for the city, as well as the wayfinding for the river. We still need to go back to that consultant and put together the final drawings and graphics for all these signs. So
I think that
there's
there was a
some
total project cost associated with that, a projection. Do you remember what that was, Phil, by chance, from the study? This is only a small component of it.
That's correct.
I think, Johnny, more to what I think the point of your question was, what would we be wayfinding? It point people toward the fort, toward the airport, the downtown business district, those kinds of things, depending on what your priority for completion of that was. If you identified the airport as a priority, then wayfinding for the airport could be a segment of the project. If the downtown area, the convention center, City Hall, that kind of thing, could all be portions of, probably are already portions of that wayfinding. The question is, how much of it do you want to do? And they've scaled down to a phase one amount, but.
And I just reiterate, I think it needs to be looked as a shared, single component. We can put a little bit to the river and put a little bit to, the city. Just think of it in that way as we move forward.
Charlotte, then Dot.
In reading some material, our culture report that was done recently in the last 6-7 months and presented to us, I read in there how San Angelo is not capitalizing on their historic value, which would bring more tourism to San Angelo. Y'all are going to laugh at me when I bring this up, except maybe the mayor won't. Why can't the cemetery use a portion of the hot money? Because I made the joke last time that, well, essentially it is heads and beds, but however, what it is a historic feature of San Angelo that needs to be promoted.
Good question. And I think the cemetery would be part of the wayfinding project, and to that extent, probably it makes some sense. The other point would be we need to figure out exactly what we would need to document in order for, in the way of heads and beds, in order for other cemetery improvements, how they might qualify for occupancy tax.
Really, the bottom line is anything that you use the revenues for has to promote tourism. And it's going to be hard to say that you're going to improve the cemetery and that's going to promote tourism. So I think
Okay.
you would have to make a direct correlation somehow would be the issue.
I do want us to look into that, and
From my
don't get
perspective.
me wrong, how I'm comparing here. I saw Colonel Bob walk in, and I know that for 8 years, air conditioning has been on the agendas for the stables at the fort. These are income-producing items, and that we in my opinion, need to look at all of our income-producing properties. If they need something, we need to get it done, especially the air conditioning at the fort. I'm already receiving phone calls that my daughter's wedding is going to be there in May or June and July, and please tell me you're going to have the air conditioning system installed. So that's important to me.
You're up, Mr. Boardman.
Once again, a consultant for the Coliseum is crazy to me. If we hire a company that can do this job that doesn't have the know-how, we're hiring the wrong company. So to me, that's $40,000 that we can put in our pocket. Once again, from what I'm understanding, the Coliseum has to be done, whether we like it or not. Now, one of my questions is, do we have capital monies? I mean, this is not an overnight thing that we just found out about, in addition to hot money.
This project has been listed for capital funding for several years. Council has never taken any action to fund that. So there are no dollars set aside for it.
Okay.
We do have in the budget that is the current draft of the budget that we'll be talking about later in the day, approximately $1.75 million in general fund dollars, which is not dedicated at this point to any particular project. Approximately $250,000 of it is earmarked for annual funding for fire trucks. But the rest of that 1.75, the 1.5 million that remains, is not earmarked or designated or thought of for anything at this point. So if that budget goes as it's currently drafted, there could be some money to contribute, to add to occupancy tax money to assist with that roof.
Well, and here again, it's just my redneck coming out, I guess, but I have an iPhone and I can find anything in Dallas. I know that anybody that has an iPhone can find the Ford or whatever. To me, the practical application is a roof for the Coliseum, and I agree with Charlotte. We're losing out on monies coming in because we don't have an air conditioner in the fort. I mean, to me, those should be absolutely the top things that are practical versus pretty signs to show me where I can find how to go anyway.
I think staff agrees, and I think that air conditioning and the roof were very high priorities. They may have been 1 and 2 for the stakeholder group we put together. I don't think you'll get any argument about those being very high priorities.
Well, and along with that, if we can find some other monies to help with the roof on the Coliseum to where we can stretch our hot dollars, I think that's a win-win situation also.
Well, as we commented earlier, we think about $500,000 available as of the end of the last fiscal year. That's cash on hand right now. Plus, we're anticipating approximately $1 million more available in a month, a little over a month. So by the time we're ready to make final decisions or execute contracts, we think we'll have in the neighborhood of $1.5 million to allocate to items that council sees as priority for this funding source.
Okay.
To go back to your question about the consultant, I believe that a consultant would only be required if there were structural issues detected, and at this point, I don't think they've seen any structural
we don't know.
damage.
And as I said
so.
before, what we're going to put out is a request for qualifications/proposals. And so with that said, I hope that we will get someone in who is qualified to construct and advise in what should be going on. I don't know if there are going to be any structural issues with changing it out yet or not, but if so, then hopefully that company has a licensed engineer who can handle those things. But it's too early for me to tell. We haven't gotten those back in yet.
Okay, thank you.
Rodney Fleming.
The way I look at this is we don't have any idea what the roof is going to cost. And we're going to have some extra money probably in a month that we could go that direction when we do find out when we have this roof. What I think we should do, and what I'm going to move that we do, is that we go ahead and put forward the stables. Everybody's kind of in agreement on doing the stables. The Convention Center marquee, the Riverfest, we talked about that the last time. I'm not for the Riverfest. I'm not going to move that we do that. The sewer line at the Convention Center, the beams at the Visitor Center, the forklift, and the fields. If you add all those things up, they add up to $402,000. That'll be under the $500,000 that we have right now. We get that done, and then we'll have a little bit of extra money so that when we do come back and the roof, let's say the roof does come back and it's $800,000 or it is $1 million. We have no idea what it is going to be. We'd have some money in there, but I say let's go ahead and move forward on these things, get them done, and just move from there.
That sounded like a motion.
I'm going to second that motion/move, whatever you want to call it. I'll second that. That's a good idea.
Can you repeat the ones that you said
Okay,
so that I
I'm
can
gonna
make
go all
sure I
the way
have
through
them?
The stables is $100,000. The Convention Center marquee is $15,000. The sewer line at the Convention Center is $50,000. The beams at the Visitor Center are $30,000. The forklift is $32,000. And the baseball field complex irrigation repairs is $175,000. I believe, if my math is right, if you add those up, it's $402,000.
Okay.
What we would ask is that you direct staff to proceed with developing firmer estimates. We're not anywhere near taking this from a staff perspective and running with it.
Okay.
We want to bring back, we want to develop an action plan for each of those items and then get council approval on each of those as it's necessary. So
I move that we direct staff to start moving forward on those items.
And I'll stick to my second. But Tina, I want to ask.
Yes, sir.
Remind me again where the
Johnny.
forklift goes.
I'm going to have to ask, this is hot money.
Yes,
Hot
ma'am.
money.
It's hot.
Hotel occupancy tax.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a huge question. We have all kinds of boards that we get people's advice and information of, and I understand that staff had a meeting not long ago with reference to hot money. I have to tell you that I had a meeting, and I'm not going to name the site or the persons, but I had a meeting at one of our local hotel motels with the folks, and I don't understand why we didn't invite them to a meeting to get their opinion on what they need in help out there. I was very surprised to find that wayfinding signs, that they desperately need, signs pointing as to where they are or where things are, because it's very difficult, even for a little, if we had a map of San Angelo at their hotels that pointed out to where all these events are, like they do in San Antonio and Austin and Dallas. But I just want to state that I was disappointed that nobody from our hotel-motel community was included to get their opinions. And when you whittle this down, maybe you could invite some of them, or because they're things, that's their business, their industry that we know nothing about. And I don't think anybody on finance knows that much about. It's just a request. Thank you.
Certainly. I think they're represented on the CVB board, and CVB board was represented. So if we are very open to comments from that industry. Things are good for them right now. We want to keep them good for them.
I just learned a
And
lot
so
in just that 1 hour and a half meeting about their industry.
we are interested in what their comments are, and we welcome their calls.
Johnny?
No, just a quick clarification on the forklift. Where does it go? Where does
From
it-
my understanding, it's for civic events. They would use it to put on bigger productions that we can't really host right now because we don't have the proper equipment for staging and things like
There's
that.
Angelica, we've had forklift issues for
Okay.
a while.
Hi, my name is Angelica. I'm the manager for civic events. The forklift specifically, we have a forklift, and we need it for any large load-in production and load-out. The one that we have is on its last leg. We do have the option of selling it as it is and can recoup, so this $32,000 is just a figure for a new one to replace that. We would recoup some money in selling our old one, but we are in desperate need of one, so.
And you'll be driving the new one? Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
If you want me to, I will.
I want that.
Kind of piggybacking with Charlotte, we've got a couple of members out there. If I'd like to invite them to come up and address anything that has been said, and maybe perhaps give us their priorities a little bit. I've kind of had my say. If y'all want to come up and visit just for a second.
I guess so.
Well, I saw them sitting out there, and we were not going to complete this without your...
Okay, Michaela Brownfield, Scott Zaruba, San Angelo Lodging Association. We do ask, you keep mentioning stakeholder meetings. We were a little shocked to find out about the meeting, that we didn't even know about it. Yes, we do sit on CVB boards and civic events boards. However, we kind of, we're not in favor, or we don't have an agenda desperately for either one of those. But we would like to be involved in the stakeholder meetings. Mr. Fleming, I appreciate the motion you've made and agree with it. But just for the record, wayfinding from the visitor standpoint is very important. Now, air conditioning at the stables is also one of our top preferences, as well as Coliseum roof. We do think other money should be put in with all of them. But standing behind that front desk trying to get people around this town is very difficult. Our joke is the town was laid out by a drunk. So wayfinding, when the money comes available, is very, very important, as well as it just makes the city more tourist friendly. So, but more than anything, as the occupancy, as hoteliers, the ones that are actually collecting that money and spend many hours working on it, we are very, very interested in being involved and wanting to have our say into it, because I think more than anybody, we probably know what those tourists that produce that tax dollar are looking for, what's needed. Probably have more information on the best use of the money, at least from the actual tourist side of it. And then also our goal, as always for years now, has been to make sure the occupancy dollars are spent in a way that it's accountable, legal, transparent. So our other issue, like I said, some of us do sit on Civic Events Board, and I know we have asked that in the budget itself, that all this the extra that we're all talking about here, be put as a separate line item, so it's very transparent, so we can all see where it's spent, what is spent, just so there's no question as far as it being commingled with other funds. So.
The only thing she didn't say is that with all those tax dollars, is we're just looking for the biggest bang for the buck as far as the taxes collected to be used for tourism and the hotel industry. It's the first thing, if you actually read the tax code, it actually names hotel industry. And since we're collecting it, the more we collect, the better we do. Obviously, the more taxes are there. So just keep in mind the biggest bang for the buck as we spend this as far as tourism-related stuff. The more people that come in and spend money in hotel rooms, the more taxes are collected. Any questions? Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, it's my turn now, and I agree with what you said, Rodney. As far as this forklift, no more than you're going to need this thing. I don't know why you couldn't rent a big forklift to do what you need to do, but am I wrong there?
When you start looking at how much it costs to rent on an as-needed basis, we use this all the time, not just for large events that come in and out, but on a daily basis. When we have football, we need it for load in, load out of the field. It's something that we need on a daily basis. So when you look at how, if we had to rent that out from ASCO, it would be way more than $32,000.
And I understand if you use it on a daily basis, but if you're just using it for these big events, maintenance is also very expensive. So if you can justify it, then
yes, sir.
Then that's in Rodney's motion. I don't have a problem with it. Also, I'd like to save some of this money, and I hate to keep talking about that, but we need to put some of this money back that we're saving. We don't have to spend it just because it's there.
Well, do recall that we do have a 90-day fund balance reserved already in addition. This is just what's over that 90-day fund balance, so just sorry for
And I want to keep some of it held back. I don't think we ought to spend it just because it's there, so I'm going to continue to harp on that one as well. Do we have any other public comment? A motion has been made and it has been seconded, and unless you want to amend your motion in some way, or you amend your second in some way, I suppose we'd better handle it. And the motion has been made for $402,000, which you got it. You have it there, don't you, Alicia? Okay. Do we need to list it again? Okay. We've already said what they're for. The motion has been made. Do we spend $425,000?
402.
402, that we give staff
Direction.
to go ahead and to firm these up. Yes. And that when we get some estimates on the roof that we can deal with, that we will take this up at that time. And possibly that'd be a good time to see where we are in the actual monies that we get, and we can look then at wayfaring, which probably is the next thing on my list. So the motion has been made, it has been seconded. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Put another 7-0 on that one too, please, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, where are we? 16 is another budget. So I guess number 17, and we've got about 17 minutes until it's time for lunch and executive. So let's go ahead and take 17, and after 17, we'll probably break for executive and lunch. Number 17 is the first public hearing in consideration of introducing an ordinance amending established boundaries of single-member District 6, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Angelo amending the established boundaries of single-member District Number 6 for the purpose of incorporating newly annexed areas into said district, providing for pre-clearance and all necessary actions, and providing for an effective date. Ms. Ramirez.
The the ordinance as you read, this caption is exactly what I'm seeking. Due to the annexation of the property in single-member District 6, we have to update our boundary maps, and that's what this is.
And that would be your area, Ms. Farmer. So would you like to make a motion one way or the other and then defend it?
I'll move to adopt the proposed ordinance and the revised SMD 6 map as presented.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, let's use Marty's second on that. Ms. Farmer made the motion. Do I have any other council discussion?
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
What does that do to the voting block for that? Does it increase it, or?
It's uninhibited.
Well, right now it's
Uninhibited.
uninhabited, but we know once it's developed, then that population will be included.
So
But it won't be included until we have our census or
So the coyotes and the birds and all can't vote.
And they don't vote.
Okay, I'm okay with it.
They howl a lot.
Do we have any other? Marty?
Coyotes don't vote?
No, they don't vote.
They just get to howl.
They do not vote. Any other discussion? Public discussion on annexation, District 6? If not, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. 7-0.
I keep thinking he says they
We can do
know
16?
everything.
Okay, let's do 16. This is the first public hearing and consideration of introducing an ordinance amending the 212-213 budget for new projects and incomplete projects, and ordinance of the City of San Angelo amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2012 and ending September 30, 2013 for new projects, incomplete projects, capital projects, and grants. Ms. Brooks.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is the final budget amendment for the 2012-2013 budget, and I'd like to go over the items on the page immediately following Exhibit A if y'all want to follow along. If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me. The first item is for reimbursed expenses for work performed by our Facilities Maintenance Department per our lease agreement with the Symphony. This increases revenue and expense by $2,365. The next item is for Nature Center programs. It's income from the summer camp and sale of retail items. This increases revenue by $11,000 and increases expense by $7,000 with a net benefit of $4,000 to the general fund. The next item is the Gang Initiative Grant, increasing both revenue and expense by $21,719. The next item is the South Tier Streetscape Project. This is funded by Downtown San Angelo and an AEP grant, increasing revenue and expense by $25,000. The next item is a property insurance claim for the pianos lost in the warehouse fire. It increases revenue by $245,000 and expense by $255,000 at a cost to the Property and Casualty Fund balance of $10,000, and that is for the deductible on the insurance policy. The next item is the airport layout plan. It's funded by passenger facility charges, and it's for an amendment to a task order approved by council in January, increasing both revenue and expense by $144,804. The next item is perpetual care at the cemetery, increasing revenue by $12,000 and expense by $11,500, netting a benefit of $500. And the last item is the Riverfest project, funded by donations, concessions, and novelty sales, increasing both revenue and expense by $30,000. The total increase to revenue is $491,888, and the total increase to expense is $497,388.
Council?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Johnny made the motion,
I have a question.
and Mr. Fleming seconded. Ms. Farmer?
The donation of the Steinway piano for the symphony, is that
Yes.
something that's going to be located in our incomplete hall or at their new performing arts center? I mean, who is it being donated to? The city or to the performing arts?
I'm not aware of a donation. Can you
Th-
enlighten us? I'm
This
not
is
aware
a
of donation.
replacement of the pianos that were lost in the warehouse fire.
This is an
based-
insurance claim.
Yes.
That still didn't answer my question, but.
Charlotte, they were storing those in that warehouse that went down, so I don't think the city would own these, and I haven't heard of a request for
I
us
was
to
just-
store them at this point. I think, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I was just looking at, appreciate the donation and the family donating, but when you donate something and we're under transition, I mean,
Yeah.
that's another,
These aren't a donation, it's an insurance payment. Those pianos were in that warehouse that burned, so we have an insurance payment. Angelica, can you elaborate?
There is one other thing, Ms. Farmer. We are working with the San Angelo Symphony in trying to look for a place to store that. It would be I guess, better for the city, for it to be stored on a city facility, and we're just looking at options. City auditorium being one, we're looking at a storage center in the BRC Center as a possible storage area for those pianos.
And that would be stored until we finish the auditorium where they would
Correct.
be using them. So
Correct.
it's a replacement issue here, but it's a good question as far as storage goes.
Further council questions? Further council comment? Comments from the public? If not, we're going to call for the vote. Did I see someone from the public? Come on. Jerry?
I hope this is the appropriate time, but my name is Jerry C., and I'm one of the leaders and the member of St. Paul Baptist Church and WTOS. I would ask you not to forget the 19th Street project, because that's one of the most dangerous streets in the Blackshear area, and our main concern is our children going back and forth to school and the pedestrians and the elderly people. It's a very dangerous street, and I ask you, please don't forget the 19th Street project, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Any further public comment? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion is made, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Put a 7-0 on that one as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. That's about all we can do till we get in budget.
Executive session.
So let's go to executive. Let me read this. Executive session under the revision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics Subtitle. A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirements that Meetings be open. First bullet, Section 551072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property regarding Lake Nasworthy lease lots, Lake Nasworthy property, Red Arroyo Hills Edition, West Texas Water Partnership, lease of city-owned property in the downtown area. Bullet point number 2, Section 551074A1, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of the city manager. It is 11:51, and I can't even start to give you a time at how long it's going to take us to be in executive. So, only thing we have left are the budget items. I expect we'll be in there a couple hours. So when we get through with the executive, then we will complete the rest of the agenda, which is all budget. Everything else is tended to. So we will, at this time, 11:51, adjourn to the executive. Meeting back to order. And it is time to discuss item number 12, which is discussion and consideration of matters related to the fiscal year 2013-214 budget, including, and I guess we'll take these one at a time. We'll start with number A, which is the first public hearing of a proposed property tax levy for the city of San Angelo for the 2013 tax year. Will that get you started?
Yes, sir.
Go, Morgan.
We have 3 items we need to do today. We'll take them one by one. Item A, have a public hearing on the tax levy. Just one item here for the public to note. We are required to have a first public hearing of the proposed tax levy for the 2013 tax year, which of course is our fiscal year 14 budget year. On August 6th, we took that record vote to propose a property tax rate. The adopted rate may not exceed 78.1 cents. The property tax levy ordinance will be introduced at the regular meeting on September 3rd.
Anyone want to move to approve this?
I'll move, if I can say this right.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, the key here is that council has taken a record vote at the last meeting. We are discussing the possibility of a rate of 78.1, and Morgan, I think this is an opportunity for public comment on
Correct.
that
And forgive
possibility.
me, it's not an action item. Item A is simply a public hearing.
Okay.
So if you'll invite public comment, give the public an opportunity to comment, and then I believe item A would be concluded with that public comment.
And the fact that we approve this means that we can go down, but we cannot go up above this amount.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
what last week's item.
Since this is a public hearing, I am asking for public comment. Anyone from the public that cares to speak to this, this is your opportunity. Any council comments?
On the
This
tax
number
rate?
A on this 78.1% per
On the
month.
tax levy, yes.
Well, I've done a bunch of work on the budget, and I've found a bunch of things I think we can cut, and it's been this council's procedure the last few years to cut 1 cent every year, and I think I'm in favor of doing that again, and I can find plenty of cuts to make up for the $370,000 that a 1% rate cut would cause.
Did you make a motion, or is that just a
It's,
discussion?
no, it's just a
Okay.
discussion, it's public hearing.
Okay.
So that's what we've done. We've had public hearing. If there is no further discussion, we'll move on to item B.
Can I talk about the half cent?
Yes.
No, okay. Yes, it was 8 years ago, a 10-year forecast, of the budget in which our outside auditing firm has acknowledged that in our financial process that we'd made a 10-year commitment to lower the property tax. But in looking at the reappraisal amounts, which we are receiving, I believe you said $561,000 more a year because of increased property values or new items coming on board. In looking at the budget, I believe there's areas that we can cut and not hurt services and still award the citizens, award our constituents for living in San Angelo and bring that property rate down at least a penny is what I would like to see.
Any other comment? Rodney?
My thought on this process is that I do agree that we should make some cuts out of this budget, and I would like to see those cuts that you're talking about, Winky, and where they're coming from. I say we cut them. If it's something that does need to be cut, we do cut it. As far as lowering, I think we're ahead of schedule on our 10-year plan. Is that correct? On far as lowering? Yes, we are ahead of schedule. There are so many other projects out there that are so vital to the city right now that are in so dire need of money that I don't think we should cut it by another penny. That $370,000, one of the main things I can think about right off the bat is the columbarium, is we could move that money over to that project and that would get it going. So I'm in favor of doing the cuts, but I'm not in favor of lowering this at this time.
Well, I'll be happy, in response to your statement, I'll be more than happy to show you the cuts that I'm proposing, and we can do it now or we can do it later as we work through this, because they add up to about $464,000, which will take care of the columbarium and other things that we have to do.
That wouldn't take care of all of that. I mean, you're talking $370,000 just on this 1 cent thing, and then when we were doing the budget the other day, we were in the whole 800 and what was it, 800 and something then.
I'm not sure that was right though, Rodney.
Well, I need to see some numbers and see the number I saw up there that we were negative 800 and something $1,000 of getting to budget and get it balanced.
Is that an item B?
Sure, if it's a pleasure, we can certainly move on to item B and talk about the budget.
This is public. Section number A was simply to discuss the levy. If we get into to B, then we can have the discussion. Johnny?
Yeah, on A, I'm in favor of just leaving it where it is after we're done with the budget, after we finalize everything. If then and only then can we then lower it, then I'm okay with it. I'd rather just keep it where it is right now until we analyze and look at everything. And if there's proposed cuts, so be it. But then I think we wait till then, because by law, we can still lower it afterwards. So I propose we leave it for right now.
I agree with Johnny. I think we have to make sure we got all the budget items first, and when we got the budget set, then we can look at what we want to do.
You have any feelings, Don? No. We can always lower it. We can't raise it, but we can always lower it. And if we decide at the end that we can lower it and still make our budget, then by all means we can lower it at that time.
And
Does
that's what I was saying, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intending to make a motion or
Yeah, we
move
can
for
take
that.
care of that after we realize what we need to spend and what we have to spend. Does that take care of A?
Yes, sir.
Okay, public hearing is over. Item B of number 12 is the first public hearing, consideration of introducing an ordinance of the City of San Angelo approving and adopting the fiscal year 2014 budget and related matter. Do I need to read the rest of this? No?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I do. An ordinance of the City of San Angelo approving and adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2013, ending September 30, 2014, adopting employee compensation schedules, providing for the general appropriation of funds, reserving unto the City Council the authority to transfer appropriations budgeted, ratifying transfers of appropriations occurring in the 2012-2013 fiscal year, and amending that budget ordinance accordingly, reserving unto the City Council the power, only as permitted by law, to amend or make changes in the budget for municipal purposes, providing authority for the city manager or his designee to make certain adjustments from time to time in or between budgeted allocations, authorizing the city manager or his designee to apply for certain grants and execute any related documents, and providing for filing of the budget. Thus read.
Yes, sir. That's a mouthful. I appreciate that. The budget you have before you, the budget ordinance and the financial summaries supporting that ordinance include basically 4 items changed from what we've added in from what we've discussed in the past. The first item would be the meet and confer contract, $465,000 for the police meet and confer negotiations. The next item is a fire training center debt service. These are items, these top 3 items are items that have been previously approved by City Council that need to be added to the budget, and so that's what's before you. And the third item there is the contractually obligated target increase request. This is specifically the water lily. There's an escalation clause in that contract. And so what's before you is a budget that balances. The general fund budget in particular balances exactly at 0. And of course, last week we had talked about an $800,000 shortfall. We had talked about needs and target increase requests. What we have proposed right now, since there's still certainly a lot of policy decision to be made, a lot of priorities and key items to be funded, what's before you today is $1,308,000 currently in contingency. We ask that you adopt that in the original budget so that it's available for use for employee raises, strategic priorities, any item there. And so that's what's before you today. And to show you in a similar format that we talked about last meeting is, we began our budget discussions with $1,976,000 revenues in excess of expenditures. Certainly we had projects $800,000 in excess of that. And so just another way of reporting it, that meet and confer was subtracted out of that 1.9 million, fire debt service, the water lily contract, leaving a remainder of $1,308,000 that's currently budgeted in contingency and will not be released without City Council or City Management directive. And so that money is 100% available for discussion for the council's pleasure of how we would like to utilize those dollars.
Mayor and council members, I'd like to, as far as the contingency, the $1.3 million, I definitely want to recommend a budget workshop to take a look at that contingency and look at, again, expenditures that Councilman Wardlaw mentioned a while ago. Again, I would like to dedicate time, at least 4 hours, that we can actually sit down and go through the contingency or this workshop. And my recommendation is, again, like we did it last time, let's consider a date, Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, whenever, in the morning and the afternoon, but I need at least 4 hours of your time.
If I could, this method allows you to introduce the budget ordinance, to move ahead on the state prescribed timeline, and it holds the 1.3 million subject to your allocation at this future budget workshop.
So we need to set a date? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I move that we set a date on either Monday or Tuesday afternoon for the budget workshop, because that's what we need.
That'll work. When's convenient? I'm open either day.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock Monday? Don?
Tuesday.
Before we get too far along, let me understand now, Michael, we're strictly talking about the $1.3 million. We're not talking about any other changes to the budget, because once we're approving this ordinance, then this budget is locked in except for the $1.3 million. Is that correct?
Well, you'll have more flexibility than that. For example, the 1.3 is undecided, but absent further action by council, the other items are approved. However, the council can still direct the city manager to move items or to reprioritize other items. That authority still exists. So the key is to get the total amounts approved and then work the details out. Our understanding is that these definitely are details that need to be worked out. There may be trade-offs, some cuts, while other items get funded. But that can occur in other areas also, not just this general fund.
Okay, so we can do or discuss the cuts that Winky has talked about here at that time, even though we're adopting this ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If we'll be talking about the tax rate again here in a minute, but we'll introduce the tax levy ordinance at the next regular council meeting. And so at this work session, we'll have an opportunity to get direction to staff about what that tax rate should be, if it needs to be lower than the current rate.
I do have appointments on Monday afternoon that must be kept, so if Tuesday would be possible, that would be much better, if council
Tuesday,
doesn't
all
mind.
right?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, 2 o'clock? That'll
Wonderful.
work for everybody down here?
Great.
I do have one thing I'd like to say.
Yes, sir.
I noticed there are some people that, over here on the left side, I'm gonna preference the left side, that in the back that have gray hair. And they had.
In a blue shirt?
Blue shirt, yeah, both of them blue shirts. And they had, there was a question, Lisa, about the retirees, and I think the email was sent to you. We do have that covered right now. Okay. I just wanted to make sure they were aware of that, so they wouldn't have to come Tuesday. Looking out there sometimes just hurts me.
Okay, we've got a budget workshop set up, 2 o'clock Tuesday. You all right with that, Charlotte?
As long as we can cover everything in the budget in the workshop. I'm accustomed to doing the line item, and we've not done that, and I've got lots of questions, especially for incentive pay and what this means, and et cetera, and so forth.
Okay. We'll cover it all.
Okay.
Okay, that was a public hearing. We still need to take comments from the public, so if anyone wishes to speak to this from the public, this is your opportunity, especially those in the blue shirts.
Mayor, while the public makes their way forward,
Yes.
I'll suggest that this one is an action item. This is introduction of the ordinance, so staff does seek an action on this item.
So we are approving it generally, but yet we're not locking anything in. We can make some adjustments, especially with our contingency, and if we choose to reprioritize next week, we can do this.
Yes, sir.
And we're introducing the ordinance.
We are introducing
This
the
is an
ordinance.
introduction of the ordinance.
How long do you have from the introduction until you have to do something? Isn't there a time frame?
Well, we'll have the second reading of the ordinance at the first meeting in September, and we are anticipating, that is also the meeting where we will introduce the tax levy ordinance, which we will pass on its second reading at the second meeting in September, which gets us in before that September 30 deadline the state sets. What we're hoping for is complete guidance from council at this next work session.
Do you want to approach Russell? I mean, if you've got something you need us to know, this is your time, sir.
Your comment has to stay pertaining to the ordinance.
And you have to state your name, too.
And
Russell Smith,
and you
retired
have
police
30
chief
seconds.
in I think most of our concerns have been met today, just in basics, but the main thing is the retirees, as some of you know, and some of you may not, for a number of years have started to take a very real interest in the proceedings here, Mr. Mayor and City Council, especially because prior to 1999, so many of the retirees retired under a very uncompetitive pay plan. In 99, they started implementing a pay plan that averaged many of the other city salaries against San Angelo, and the raises started rising. The problem with those other retirees is they retired under that old system of 40 to 50% below, with an annuity that was 40 to 50% below their counterparts. At the same time that this was happening, there came about a day where the city council, under a different city manager, took away our pharmacy. They took away our cost of living raises, and they dramatically hurt the retirees by starting to charge them for health care and to make the dependent coverage in many cases as high as 10 times higher than it was the year before. In our employee handbook, it said prior to 99 that we would receive our health care. And so we've come, and for any of you that are not aware of these situations, I actually have figures that show at one point where about, I believe, 20% of the employees retired at less than $500 a month. As your police chief, I retired at taking home about $1,800 a month, and it looks like now when I turn 65, it'll take about a third of that to pay the taxes on my house. So that's our concern, and we're just aware, and I did email a few of you because of something that we heard, and I don't know if this is the time or the place. We were kind of discussing it before the invitation, and thank you very much. And some of these guys knew me when I had black hair. But anyway, we're here to help inform you if you need it to understand the situation of the retirees. We do have facts and figures that we got from the Texas Municipal Retirement System in the past. One of our greatest concerns, and I don't know if I should say this under this, and I will, and then I'll shut up and go sit down. But is it recently, where they took away the cost of living raise for your retirees, people that retire today get a cost of living raise and have been getting them, and now back to about the people at 2002 that retired from 2002 on have gotten them. But we, as many of us that retired, in a lot of your water department and street and bridge people, they get hardly anything. So even a $10 or $15, $20 increase on them is a tremendous amount of money. So anyway, we appreciate what you do. We know you face many challenges, but we also know that you're living in about a 5 or 10 year window where you're going to have some growth. And little by little, we're dying off. They did away with this in 2000. No, it's the truth, because in 2000, they stopped the health care for oncoming employees. And so those of us that are left, well, we're here. So, and we're very much part of the city and always going to be. Appreciate y'all, and y'all have a real challenge. So
Thank you, Russell.
y'all.
I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
We've got a motion. We've got a second. We've had comments. Is there any further comment from either the council or the public? If not, I will ask for approval. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Okay, we have one nay. That would be Ms. Farmer. We would have 6 ayes. 6-1, Ms. Alicia. All righty, we've got one other section of this. And that would be C, which is consideration of conducting a separate record vote to ratify the property tax increase of 2.52% as reflected in the newly adopted budget and place the adoption of this tax rate increase on the agenda for the September 3, 2013 regular meeting of the City Council as an action item and any action in connection thereto. So this is just public hearing as well?
We are required to hold as a separate record vote. We've already met the public hearing requirement. This is just to ratify that the budget that's been introduced has greater property tax revenue than last year's budget to the tune of 2.52%. And the state law is very clear and a big stickler that what they would prefer is that when you move to adopt this item, that you move and read exactly what's in quotes here on your screen.
Okay, let me make it. I move that we ratify the property tax increase of 2.52% as reflected in the newly adopted budget and place the adoption of this tax rate increase on the agenda for the September 3, 2013 regular meeting of the City Council as an action item.
Second.
Second. Comment. Council? Yes, sir.
What if we reduce the property tax rate? Maybe it's 2.52 incorrect.
It will require an amendment to the budget, and the 2.52 will change. Yes, sir.
Is that going to be a problem at the next meeting?
No.
No, sir. No, it's perfectly acceptable to adopt a lower tax rate later. The state is just, because of their deadlines of we have to adopt the budget before we adopt a tax rate, that's what's in the budget right now, is the flat tax rate, which would yield a 2.52%, which, as we've discussed in previous meetings, individual meetings and public meetings.
Any other questions? Public comment? I've got a motion. I've got a second. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay.
Nay.
This is another 6-1 vote. Ms. Farmer is nay. And that takes us, we've taken care of all the rest of them, haven't we? Yes, sir. This takes us to follow-up and administrative issues. Number 18 is consideration of and possible action on matters discussed in executive closed session if needed. And we do discuss several items in executive, but there was no decisions arrived at. So at this time, there is nothing to talk about from the executive session, which leads us to number 19, which is consideration of approving various board nominations by council and designated council members. A is the Fort Concho Museum Board, Darren Fentress, SMD 3, to a full first term, January 2016. Water Advisory Board, Paul Alexander, from Single Member District 3 to an unexpired term, September 2013.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
On the Water Advisory Board, now I need to ask on the consolidations of boards that we'd been doing and cutting down the number of boards and adding to. There was some prior discussion about the Water Advisory Board since they hadn't met since January of 2012. The need for that board, and I don't remember the outcome, so I need to ask somebody.
At the time when they were all reviewed, yes, they had not met, but that was not one of the boards that they decided to consolidate. So it was left as is.
Okay.
Looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve these two gentlemen.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Do we have comment from council? Do we have public comment? If not, I'll call for the vote. All of those in favor of approving Darren Fentress and Paul Alexander signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. That's a 7-0, Alicia. All right, now we're announcements and considerations of future items. That one kind of got out of spot, didn't it?
It did.
Let's go to 21. Consideration of October 21, 2013 City Council meeting and any action in connection thereto. And I suppose consideration of, what does that mean?
I think I had two, either council members and the city manager that were going to be out on that date, and I need to make sure that this meeting would be held as is or as scheduled, or do we need to reschedule it? I think you had a conference.
Who's going to be gone?
I don't have anything going for October 21.
When is TML. Is TML
I think
earlier
it's
than that?
TML or.
That is TML?
No, I
No.
think TMO starts on the 8th, doesn't it? October 8th through the
I'm
11th.
not sure. Somebody said something about not being at the meeting.
There is a Ports to Plains meeting in Amarillo.
That is
Immediately.
the second,
That's
the
first,
third, and the
second,
fourth.
third, or- Yeah, it's the first part of the month.
Yeah. There is a TML meeting in there sometime, but I'm not sure when it is.
Yeah, it's going to be, let me see here.
That may be when it is.
My calendar shows TML is Tuesday, October 8th for the rest of that week. And the first Tuesday of October, I think, is the 1st.
October the 1st.
Yep. So you show
There's-
TML on the 8th?
TML, I showed TML on the 8th. I showed Tuesday the 1st that Ports to Plains
Yes, that's correct.
starts. I
Well,
think
I've
that's
got
a council-
Wednesday, I've got Wednesday the 2nd, Thursday the 3rd, and Friday the
Friday.
4th for Ports to Plains.
Do you know if those sessions start first thing in the morning on Wednesday?
I'm sure that's when it'll start.
That would make Tuesday a travel day.
Well, we're out of here usually by 6. I don't have a problem with Tuesday the 1st as a meeting date. And I don't have a problem with the 21st unless it does coincide with something that we're not seeing.
We'll come back to that, okay?
We'll worry about that later.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on then from 21. Evening meetings, this is item number 22. Beginning October 1, 2013, the City Council will conduct an evening meeting at 6 o'clock once per quarter. Tentative meeting dates, October 1, 2013, January 7, 2014, April 1, 2014, July 1, 2014.
And this is just a public notice.
So it doesn't require any action at
No,
this time?
Not at
What-
this time.
Was this supposed,
This was based on Mr. Vardaman's suggestion that we conduct an evening meeting once per quarter.
we're going to try one time, actually.
We were gonna try one.
That's it.
And then if it went well, then we would talk about quarters.
So it's just one meeting, and
Okay.
then we'll go from
Yeah.
there.
Do we want to go
But
ahead
that's
and
not
then
what he
lock
said.
in this October 1, 2013 as an evening meeting?
But if you're going to be traveling,
Actually, Daniel, we have you marked out on Tuesday, and
You're-
it says Amarillo, Ports to Plains.
Okay.
So there may be a pre-event issue.
And that's October 1, isn't it?
Both our calendars show that. Becky is,
So it can't be October, the first meeting then?
That'd be October 15th.
January
the second meeting in October?
You want to go to the 8th?
No.
Oh, that's when you said TML, didn't you?
The
Yes, sir.
sec- The
Yes, sir.
second meeting in October is the 15th.
The 15th.
Yeah, we can do, maybe the second meeting in October might work out.
Yeah.
Better.
So in other words, the October meeting will be Tuesday, the 15th?
The afternoon
The
meeting.
evening.
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 7 o'clock.
Okay. If someone wants to make a motion then that the first evening meeting will begin October 15th, 2013
At 6 PM,
at 6 PM?
Well, let's do 5 instead of 6.
5 o'clock?
Yeah, that way we'll get out at midnight instead of 1, and we won't
Right.
run over into the next day, see?
Or
And that'll
2
be
instead of
confusing.
3.
5 or 5:30 to allow those who get off at 5.
Well,
Yeah.
those who get off at 5 will miss the pledge, the prayer,
Is your speaker on?
Why don't we just do it 5:30?
Yeah.
5:30.
Yes.
Okay.
5:30?
I'll move for 5:30.
Okay. Did you make a motion on that? Or did you move that be 5:30 on October the 15th as
Did
our
you move
first
it?
evening meeting?
Yes.
Anybody want to second that?
I did.
Okay. Any comment from council? Any comment from public? Motion has been made that our first evening city council meeting will be Tuesday the 15th at 5:30, that there will not be a meeting on the 1st because we will be traveling. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
You did say October, but we knew what you meant.
October, Tuesday, the 15th, evening council meeting, 5:30 PM.
Aye.
I have it straight now? Okay.
And
I
nothing
knew
about
what
the
you meant,
first.
Dwayne.
Huh?
And nothing about the first, because you mentioned the first.
Yeah.
I think the first, we decided not to have one, didn't we?
No, not an evening
The
meeting.
evening meeting.
So it'll just be a regular meeting,
Regular
just
meeting
our 9 to
during the
6
day.
on the 1st? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the 1st will remain the same. The 15th will be at 5:30 until 2:30.
I think.
Let me
we-
hear some eyes on this.
I think we need notification as to when we're meeting now.
I think
Did
it's
you
that-
get all that, Alicia?
Mayor?
Yes.
I think it's that little black book that's messing you
Don't
up.
be messing with my little black book.
To hit you upside
If
the head.
everybody's in favor, say aye again.
Aye.
If anybody's opposed, say nay. 7-0. Okay, that takes care of the evening meeting. Now we have item number 20, which is announcements, consideration of future agenda items.
I don't have a future agenda item, but, and I wish the chief wouldn't have left. Did the Tahoes just hit the streets?
We've got
Yeah.
2 batches of Tahoes. We've got
Okay.
some that were ordered a few months back or received some time back, and they're probably hitting the streets as they get equipped. The ones that you recently approved, those orders have just been placed.
Well, I knew the new ones weren't, and I knew we had some in January, because I'm getting phone calls about them, so I was wondering.
I saw one day before yesterday.
Okay.
Do we have any future agenda items anyone wants to add?
I'd like to put my ASU thing on there. Maybe we have on the carts, the resolution for that. Maybe we won't have, if we have, let's do it this way. If we have more than 18 items, then don't put it on there till the next one, but.
Anyone else?
Don, that's a given. Oh.
Well, somewhere along there, it'll work itself in.
Discussion items or all items? All.
Oh.
Any of the items, any other items for future? If there's no other items, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays. This meeting is adjourned. It is 4:15.